गुड मॉर्निंग एवरीवन। आप में से कितने लोग आज पहली बार क्लास करने आए हैं? A few of you. Okay. तो I'll just take 15 minutes before your class starts. मैं थोड़ा सा प्रोग्राम को इंट्रोड्यूस कर देता हूँ और किन चीजों पे फोकस करना है, विल टॉक अबाउट दैट. ओके. तो you're all starting your civil services journey. ये जून में सबसे ज्यादा बच्चे शुरू करते हैं. You have less than 1 year for your preliminary examination. इस पीरियड में what do you think is the most important quality which will get you through? Consistency. Okay. और किसी को इसके अलावा कोई ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट क्वालिटी लगती है? डिसिप्लिन. ओके. कंसिस्टेंसी या डिसिप्लिन, काइंड ऑफ सिमिलर थिंग्स ना. ओके. एनीथिंग एल्स व्हिच इज इंपॉर्टेंट? मल्टीपल रिविजन्स. ओके. ओके, फाइन. रिविजन्स. व्हाट एल्स? एक रिवर्स लिख रहे हैं, लक ही बकवास चीज है ना. एक चीज समझाता हूँ मैं आप लोगों को सबको. अभी प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जामिनेशन हुआ, यू आर सीइंग अ लॉट ऑफ ह्यू एंड क्राई. सब बकवास है वो. 99% बच्चे फेल होते हैं. इस बार उनको रीजन मिल गया कि पेपर थोड़ा डिफरेंट था फॉर क्रिटिसाइजिंग पेपर. पेपर वाज नॉट समथिंग दैट वाज नॉट डूएबल. बहुत क्लियरली इस बात को समझो. मैं फर्स्ट डे से बोल रहा हूँ. पेपर पीपल आर सेइंग कि सर आप क्योंकि आपके नोट से आया आप ऐसा बोल रहे हो. नहीं, मैं ऐसा इसलिए नहीं बोल रहा हूँ. और पहली बात, अगर नोट से आया तो मतलब पढ़ा है ना बच्चों ने. कट ऑफ विल बी रिड्यूस्ड. तो डोंट गो बाय कि आपको लक चाहिए, ये चाहिए, वो चाहिए. ऐसा होता तो कुछ बच्चे तो वो भी सिलेक्ट हो जाते ना जो बिल्कुल पढ़ ही नहीं रहे, है ना. जो सुबह सुबह बैठ जाते रोड पे, मैं लकी हूँ, लकी हूँ, लकी हूँ. एक सिलेक्शन तो वैसा भी होता ना. इस बार के एग्जाम को लोग बोल रहे बहुत लक की जरूरत थी. आई हैवंट सीन अ सिंगल स्टूडेंट वाज नॉट वेरी सिंसियर, नॉट वेरी हार्ड वर्किंग, गेटिंग थ्रू. आई हैव सीन स्टूडेंट्स हु आर सिंसियर एंड हार्ड वर्किंग नॉट गेटिंग थ्रू. बट वो हर साल हो रहा है. बिकॉज दिस इज द नेचर ऑफ द एग्जाम. द एग्जाम इज eventually going to select 1,000 students. 1,000 students are going to be selected. तो ये लक वाला चीज साइड में छोड़ दो. ये यू आर राइट, दीज थिंग्स आर इंपॉर्टेंट. कंसिस्टेंसी, डिसिप्लिन, रिविजन. बट ना, मैं बोलता हूं यहाँ पे वन थिंग विच इज more important than these two things. Suppose you are very consistent. You are, what's your name? Sandeep. Sandeep is very consistent. Sandeep is studying for 10 hours daily. हर रोज जाता है, 10 घंटे पढ़ रहा है ना. क्लास में ही स्टडिंग फॉर 2 hours, फॉर 2.5 hours for GS, 2.5 hours for optional. He's going home, spending another 2.5 hours on GS, revising whatever he's doing, and spending another 2.5 hours for optional. 10 घंटे. यहाँ पे भी एक प्रॉब्लम आ सकती है, फोकस. फोकस इज नॉट ओनली ऑन फोकस ऑन स्टडीज. फोकस इज ऑन बिलीव करना कि आप जो पढ़ रहे हो यही पढ़ना है, 5 और किताबें नहीं पढ़नी. Suppose he's doing polity right now. Polity में Lakshmikant is the source that he starts following. कि class notes plus Lakshmikant is something that I'll follow. But tomorrow some of his friends says नहीं यार, एक ये ना इस institution के notes हैं, ये ले लेते हैं. कोई बोलता है नहीं, डीडी बासु भी is a good book. कोई बोलता है सुभाष कश्यप is also a good book. ऐसे करके 5 किताबें खरीद लेता है और हर रोज कुछ नया पढ़ रहा होता है. What is lost is focus. He's consistent, he's disciplined, but ना मुझे एक सोर्स पढ़ना है. And the biggest mistake which every aspirant does, especially in the beginning, because they are very excited, is they start running behind multiple things. Class notes, plus, if needed, a standard source. These are good enough for you to get selected for both preliminary and mains examination, at least here. हम हम आपको बोल रहे हैं, at the end of the year your complaint will be ज्यादा पढ़ाया है. Your complaint will not be कम पढ़ा है. Your complaint will be छोड़ दो। योर कंप्लेन विल नॉट बी कि सर ये तो हुआ ही नहीं। योर कंप्लेन विल बी सर हो गया, अब छोड़ दो, जाने दो हमें। योर कंप्लेन विल बी अरे इतने एमसीक्यू क्यों प्रैक्टिस कराए हैं? हम आपको जनवरी से मई के बीच में विल मेक यू सॉल्व 10,000 प्लस एमसीक्यूज। ओके, तो इफ यू आर हियर, एक चीज अदर देन बीइंग डिसिप्लिन्ड, अदर देन ensuring कि हम रिविजन्स कर रहे हैं, प्लीज फोकस। जो मिल रहा है उसमें से कुछ गलत नहीं होना चाहिए। दिस ईयर प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जामिनेशन वाज वेरी अनकन्वेंशनल, दिस इज व्हाट एवरीवन इज सेइंग। I'll be making a video in 1 or 2 days, अभी समय नहीं मिल पा रहा है because so many students are coming, कि आपने जो पिछले एक साल में पढ़ा है उससे पढ़ के you could have solved 60-70 questions easily, बाकी 20-30 क्वेश्चन में थोड़ा गेस करते। बट द पॉइंट इज कि अगर आप 60-70 क्वेश्चंस इजीली सॉल्व कर पा रहे हो एंड कट ऑफ इज एक्सपेक्टेड टू बी लेस देन 80, 40 क्वेश्चंस वाला कट ऑफ आने वाला है, तो इट वाज गुड इनफ। इफ यू आर फोकस्ड यू कुड हैव डन इट इजीली। तो ना, मैं जनरली ये बोलता हूं, फोकस करो, डिसिप्लिन रहो या कंसिस्टेंट रहो, एंड रिविजन करो। इन तीन चीजों को आपको करना होगा। एवरीथिंग एल्स वी विल डू। क्या पढ़ना है, कितना पढ़ना है, all of that is our responsibility. You remain focused on what is being done. You remain disciplined. If you're capable of studying 8 hours a day, study 8 hours a day. But फिर ना, throughout the year, study 8 hours a day, other than the rest that you take. Maybe on Sundays you may be taking some rest. अभी मैं बताता हूँ कि कैसे हम अपना डे प्लान करेंगे, सारी चीजें करेंगे। And then, more important than continuing to run behind new study material will be ensuring that we are revising, 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 revising. इन सब का फॉर्मूला हमने बना के रखा है। कब कैसे रिवाइज करेंगे, विल टॉक अबाउट ऑल दोज थिंग्स ऑल्सो इन द नेक्स्ट फ्यू मिनट्स, इन द नेक्स्ट 5-10 मिनट्स। बट ये एफडीआर ध्यान रखो। जो पढ़ाया है सर, आपने जो क्लास में पढ़ाया है, जो हमने क्लास में पढ़ा है, आप मुझे सुबह 3 बजे उठा के पूछना, मैं बता दूंगा। ये नहीं बोलूंगा कि ओके सर, आज शाम को तो ना मैं कोई दूसरी किताब पढ़ने लग गया था, आज शाम को तो मैं कोई और नोट्स पढ़ने लग गया था। नहीं सर, इफ आई एम स्टडिंग फॉर 6 hours a day, आई प्रॉमिस यू थ्रू आउट द ईयर आई स्टडी फॉर 6 hours a day। वो जो सिस्टम होता है ना, सम डे यूल स्टडी फॉर 16 hours एंड यूल फील लाइक आग लगा देंगे। वो 16 hours is not viable, is not possible. Suppose a student is studying only for 6 hours a day. उसे पता है 6 घंटे ही है मेरे पास, मुझे इसमें ही करना है। His plan, his schedule will go accordingly, and even that can be enough. Some of the students online, doing classes online or who will watch recorded videos will be working aspirants. And अगर वो 6 घंटे भी पढ़ पा रहे हैं रोज, वो कंसिस्टेंटली कर रहे हैं, there's a chance that they will clear the examination. तो आप जो शेड्यूल बनाओगे, आप दिन में जो भी शेड्यूल बनाओगे, स्टिक टू इट एंड रिवाइज। रिवाइज अभी मैं आपको समझाता हूं रिवीजन कैसे करना है। ओके, तो बिफोर यू स्टार्ट योर प्रिपरेशन, कीप दिस एफडीआर इन माइंड। आप फोकस्ड रहोगे, जो पढ़ाया जा रहा है उस पे फोकस्ड रहोगे। वो होता है ना, घोड़े के आगे ये लगा दिया जाता है, ये करना है, इधर उधर नहीं भागना है। बहुत ध्यान से। आपको कोई सब्जेक्ट समझने में दिक्कत हो रही है, मेंटर से बात करो, और दिक्कत हो रही है, मेरे से बात करो। बिफोर यू डिसाइड टू स्विच योर स्टडी मटेरियल, बिफोर यू डिसाइड टू स्विच एनीथिंग, जस्ट वन स्पीक टू मी। हमें फोकस्ड रहना है। आपको मान लो कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा होगा, हम बोल देंगे कि ये ऐसे पढ़ लो, बट फिर आप वहीं पे फोकस्ड रहेंगे। व्हाट विल वी नॉट कीप डूइंग, विल नॉट कीप चेंजिंग स्टडी मटेरियल एंड ऑल दो स्टफ। आर वी गेटिंग इट? देखो, जून बैच मेरा पर्सनल मानना होता है कि प्रिपरेशन में वी रिक्वायर लाइक प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जामिनेशन से 15 मंथ पहले करना चाहिए। जनरली मार्च इज अ सुटेबल टाइम टू स्टार्ट। तो अब जून बैच में जो बच्चे आते हैं उनको मेहनत ज्यादा करनी होगी। हम फरवरी एंड तक कोर्स कंप्लीट करना है एंड करना है। दिस खराटे मार रहे हो क्लास में? देयर शुड बी no excuse there. तो जून बैच में there will be some extra classes also. So generally what you'll have 6 classes a week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. 2 classes will go on. आपके केस में I think we are starting with polity. Babu sir will be starting with polity and then international relations. These are the 2 subjects. पॉलिटी थोड़ा बोरिंग होगा भी, इंटरनेशनल रिलेशन नहीं. बाबू सर पढ़ाएंगे तो पॉलिटी भी बोरिंग नहीं होगा, बट इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस में तो बहुत मजा आने वाला है. इनफैक्ट आपकी करंट अफेयर्स क्लासेस भी आई थिंक नेक्स्ट वीक से स्टार्ट हो जाएंगी, नेक्स्ट वीक या नेक्स्ट टू नेक्स्ट वीक से स्टार्ट हो जाएंगी. एंड देयर ऑल्सो आई विल प्रायोरिटाइज कि जो आपकी क्लास में चल रहा है पॉलिटी और आईआर, मैं उसके सारे करंट अफेयर्स भी आपको अपडेट करके सबसे पहले वो खत्म करूं, सो दैट योर प्रिपरेशन फॉर पॉलिटी एंड आईआर विल बी थॉरली डन. Are you understanding this? So you will have 6 classes a week, 2 subjects at a time. On Sundays, you will have 2 tests, one objective test, one subjective test. इसमें ये दोनों पोर्शन भी आएगा, और जब आपकी करंट अफेयर्स क्लासेस स्टार्ट हो जाएंगी सैटरडे संडे, you will have current affairs classes. That portion will also be part of the syllabus. We have designed these tests in a manner where uh, you will be forcing you to do multiple revision. आपके revisions कैसे होने? आपके revisions, if you're spending 2.5 hours in classroom, try to spend another 2.5 hours at home. क्लास के नोट्स को जो भी आपने क्लास में बनाया अच्छे से समझो. अगर टीचर हैज रेफर्ड सम स्टैंडर्ड बुक, go through the standard book. अगर टीचर हैज रेफर्ड सम स्टडी मटेरियल, given some study material, go through that study material. Spend 2.5 hours. आपको लगता नहीं मुझे सब आ गया, उस टॉपिक के पीवाईक्यूज देखो जो जनरली आपके स्टडी मटेरियल के पीछे होंगे, और या कोई पीवाईक्यू बुक लेके देखेंगे, एंड ट्राई टू डू दैट. तो एवरी डे एट होम यू विल स्पेंड 2 hours ऑन रिवाइजिंग व्हाट यू हैव डन इन क्लास. जिस दिन 2 क्लासेस हो जाएंगी, ऐसा होगा ना कि June batch, the batch which is starting today, I think sometimes in future, rather than having 6 classes, you'll have 9 classes a week. तो उस दिन 2 क्लासेस हो रही होंगी, यू विल स्पेंड 4-5 hours इन क्लास. उस दिन भी क्या इंश्योर करना है, घर जाके एटलीस्ट 40 मिनट्स दोनों क्लासेस का रिविजन करना है. तो ये फर्स्ट रिविजन विल बी डेली. Whatever you study in class, you will go home and revise. Your second revision will be weekly. सैटरडे को, संडे को टेस्ट है आपका, सैटरडे को अपने आप रिविजन हो जाएगा. मेक श्योर, हमने ना सबसे अच्छा किन बच्चों को परफॉर्म करते हुए देखा है, जिन बच्चों ने सारे टेस्ट दिए हैं. जो बच्चा ये बोलता है कि चाहे कुछ भी हो जाए मैं टेस्ट नहीं छोड़ने वाला. टेस्ट्स आर लाइक मिड टर्म एंड टर्म एग्जाम्स ऑफ कॉलेज, ये नहीं दिया तो फेल हो ही गए. टेस्ट आर समथिंग विच आर, देखो हमें लगता है कि द प्रॉब्लम विथ प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जामिनेशन इज दिस, कि इट इज दैट एग्जाम दैट मैटर्स. हम ये बिलीव कर लेते हैं कि इट इज ऑन आवर परफॉर्मेंस ऑन डी डे दैट वुड मैटर, बट नो, योर परफॉर्मेंस ऑन डी डे विल बी डिसाइडेड बाय योर परफॉर्मेंस एवरी वीक. तो प्लीज मेक श्योर जो ये वीकली टेस्ट है, संडे को टेस्ट है, बोथ ऑब्जेक्टिव एंड सब्जेक्टिव देना है. अब एक और चीज, एक और पैटर्न मैं आपको अभी बता रहा हूं जो होता है, बच्चा सब्जेक्टिव टेस्ट नहीं लिखता, बोलता मुझे अभी आंसर राइटिंग नहीं आती है. अरे लिखो ना, यूल राइट शिट, फाइन. पहला आंसर आप जब भी लिखोगे बहुत खराब लिखोगे. राइट अ वेरी बैड आंसर, बट राइट. आपके क्लास में भी आंसर राइटिंग होगा, आपके डाउट सेशंस भी हमने ऐसे प्लान किए कि उसमें कुछ आंसर राइटिंग हो रहे हो. स्टार्ट राइटिंग. You will increase your chances of getting selected if you're consistent here. Now, what देखो, आपने 2 बार कोई भी चीज जो पढ़ी वो 2 बार एक वीक में रिवाइज कर ली, एक दिन तो उसी दिन घर जाके, दूसरे दिन यहाँ पे जाके. फिर when a substantial, let's say पॉलिटी में हमें 40 क्लासेस देनी है, लेट्स अज्यूम दैट, मैं नंबर्स बाबू सर डिसाइड करेंगे. आफ्टर सब्सटैंशियल, लेट्स से हाफ ऑफ द सिलेबस इज ओवर फॉर पॉलिटी, half of the syllabus is over for the other subject. We will have a bigger test. यहाँ पे you will have 5 to 6 questions of subjective test and 50 questions of objective test. These will be smaller tests, but at the end of the month और जब भी syllabus का substantial portion खत्म होगा, we'll have kind of a monthly test or bi-monthly test. Idea क्या है इसमें? whatever you have studied in those 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, उस पीरियड में जितना भी पढ़ा, आपका वीकली टेस्ट में रिवीजन तो हो गया दूसरी बार, यहां पे यू शुड हैव योर थर्ड रिवीजन. At the end of 3 months, you'll have a quarterly test, again consisting of the syllabus of the entire quarter, fourth revision. Somewhere in November, December, you'll have your half yearly test, which will have syllabus of the entire 6 months. अब समझो पर्पस क्या है. If you follow the program properly, you'll be doing first revision, second revision, third revision, fourth revision, fifth revision. अब समझ में आ रहा है? By the time you reach January, the entire syllabus would be revised 4-5 times. बहुत difficult होगा करना. मंथली टेस्ट जब आता है ना, और सैटरडे को यार पूरे मंथ का रिवाइज करना है, प्रॉब्लम होगा, है ना. पूरे मंथ का रिवीजन करना, सैटरडे को बैठ के प्रॉब्लम होगा. तो उसको प्लीज समझो. अगर आप वीकली टेस्ट में अच्छे से प्रिपेयर्ड हो, अगर आप वीक 1, वीक 2, वीक 3, वीक 4 इसमें अच्छे से प्रिपेयर्ड हो, तो जो आपका मान लो वीक 5 या वीक 6, वीक 7 जब भी वो बड़ा वाला टेस्ट आएगा, सब्सटैंशियल पार्ट ऑफ और द सिलेबस वुड बी डन, यू विल बी वेल प्रिपेयर्ड. अभी तक व्हाट वी यूज्ड टू डू वाज, वीक 1 में वी यूज्ड टू ओनली गिव सिलेबस फॉर दिस वीक, वीक 2 में वी यूज्ड टू गिव सिलेबस फॉर दिस वीक, वीक 3 में वी यूज्ड टू गिव सिलेबस फॉर दिस वीक, वीक 4 में वी यूज्ड टू गिव सिलेबस फॉर दिस वीक. तो जब मंथली टेस्ट आता था ना, तो ये वाली चीज पढ़े हुए आपको काफी टाइम हो जाता था. नाउ व्हाट वी हैव डिसाइडेड इज, test for every week will consist of 70 to 80% of what was done in this week and 20% of what was done in the previous weeks, so that in second week also you are giving some time to what you studied in first week. 20% question will come from there. In third week 80% यहीं से आएगा, but 20% कहां से आएगा? पुराने वाली वीक से. so that you are flipping through it, so that when 6th week पे या कभी भी जब आपका वो बड़ा टेस्ट आए ना, ऐसा ना लगे यार वीक 1 तो मेरा भूल चुके हैं. तो while 70-80% questions will come from what you have done from Monday to Saturday, but some part of the questions we will, अभी हमने decide किया है कि this is what we'll keep doing, so that you are वो monthly test इतना problematic ना हो. मंथली टेस्ट फिर क्वार्टरली टेस्ट इतना प्रॉब्लमेटिक ना हो. क्वार्टरली टेस्ट से पहले तो विल ट्राई टू गिव यू अ डेज ऑफ ऑल्सो, कि जाओ पढ़ लो. थोड़ा डिफिकल्ट हो जाएगा, नहीं तो पूरे क्वार्टर के लिए पढ़ना. तो रिवीजन हम करा देंगे. आपका मैंने क्या बोला, आप जो करने को बोला जा रहा है उस पर फोकस्ड रहो कि ये मुझे करना है. आप अगर रोज 6 घंटे पढ़ने का प्लान कर रहे हो, 6 घंटे पढ़ने का प्लान रखो कि यार मेरे को ऐसे, उससे ना फिर यू विल accordingly plan ki if I have only 6 hours, I'll have to do revision in 1 hour only, and consistently you will keep doing it. If you are not doing that, then it will be problematic. If you're studying for 16 hours a day and then telling everyone पापा आज तो 16 घंटे पढ़ाई करी, आपका बच्चा बहुत मेहनती हो गया है, और फिर अगले दूसरे दिन भी 16 घंटे पढ़ लिए, तीसरे दिन भी 16 घंटे पढ़ लिए, but then you have planned कि मेरे को इतना टाइम रिवीजन में लगता है, इतना टाइम लगता है, but you cannot keep doing that for rest of your life. It's a marathon. You cannot keep performing till the time आप अपने आप को रेस्ट नहीं दे रहे हो, आप अपने हेल्थ का ध्यान नहीं रहे हो. डोंट गो बाय ऑल दैट क्रैप. जब कोई फिल्म स्टार बोलता है मैं 4 घंटे सोता हूँ, कोई पॉलिटिशियन बोलता है मैं 4 घंटे सोता हूँ, उनको बुद्धि नहीं लगानी होती है. अगर कोई पॉलिटिशियन बोल भी रहा है ना कि मैं 4 घंटे सोता हूँ, 5 घंटे सोता हूँ, उसको बहुत कंफर्टेबल जीवन चल रहा है. रेंज रोवर कार में 1 घंटे जब उनका ट्रैवल का होता है तो सो लेते हैं कंफर्टेबली. उनको उनको ट्रैफिक सिग्नल पे, ब्रेकर्स पे झटके नहीं लग रहे होते हैं. तो दिखाने के लिए है कि वो सुबह 4 बजे उठ रहे हैं और ये सब कर रहे हैं. आप अपना 6 to 7 आवर्स का कंसिस्टेंट स्लीप लेंगे, आप अपना 40, अभी मैं उसकी भी बात करता हूँ. बट डू वी हैव क्लैरिटी ऑन दिस? इसको ना, ये सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है. मैं देखता हूँ मंथली टेस्ट होता है, आधे बच्चे गायब हो जाते हैं. मंथली टेस्ट में द नंबर ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स हु अपीयर आर वेरी लेस. हमें वो नहीं करना है. ठीक है. नाउ डू वी हैव क्लैरिटी ऑन हाउ टेस्ट वुड अकर? दिस विल कीप गोइंग ऑन टिल February. उसके फिर जनवरी से अप्रैल तक वी ऑल्सो डू दिस. हम ना हर वीक में 4-5 टेस्ट भी लेने रखते हैं. 50 क्वेश्चंस के ऑब्जेक्टिव टेस्ट। पर्पस क्या है? उस टाइम रिग्रेस प्रीलिम्स रिवीजन पे चले जाए। ऐसे प्री और मेंस के बीच में विल मेक यू राइट 4-5 आंसर्स एवरी डे। यहाँ पे तो संडे को लिखोगे ना, वहां पे विल मेक यू राइट 4-5, तो विल मेक यू गो फॉर रिग्रेस मेंस रिवीजन। इतना सब करने के बाद ना कोई रीजन नहीं होता है सिलेक्शन रुकने का। बट यूर ऑल बिगिनर्स, यूर ऑल एक्साइटेड, और एक्साइटमेंट में आप फोकस लूज कर जाते हो। आपका फ्लैटमेट बोलेगा नहीं ये किताब ज्यादा अच्छी है, आप वो किताब उठा के देखना। मेरे पास हिस्ट्री की 15 किताबें हो गई थी और उसमें से एक भी अच्छे से नहीं पढ़ी थी। मेरे पास सिर्फ एंशिएंट इंडिया की 15 किताबें थी, मेरा ऑप्शनल हिस्ट्री था। और मेरे को लगता है कि अगर मैंने एक किताब अच्छे से और एक नोट्स अच्छे से पढ़ा होता, क्या होता? मेरा सिलेबस सब्सटेंशियली पूरा होता, मेरा एग्जाम में परफॉर्मेंस बहुत अच्छा होता। मैं बिना वजह एक किताब से कुछ पैराग्राफ पढ़ के, हाँ देख ये यहाँ लिखा है, ये तो कहीं नहीं पता था, क्या हो गया? जरूरी थोड़ी है यूपीएससी उसमें से कुछ पूछने वाला है। यू आर गेटिंग माई पॉइंट? तो प्लीज प्लीज प्लीज, आई एम रिपीटिंग दिस, एक सोर्स बार बार रिवाइज करना, और बाकी जो डाइवर्सिटी चाहिए न्यूज़पेपर दे देता है। बाकी जितनी भी डाइवर्सिटी चाहिए वो मैं दे दूंगा आपको। हर सैटरडे संडे आके हर सब्जेक्ट में मैं आपको अलग पर्सपेक्टिव दूंगा। आर वी गेटिंग दिस? ओके, तो ये वाला पार्ट हो गया। नाउ कम्स टू स्टडी मटेरियल। नाउ स्टडी मटेरियल में ना व्हाट हैपेंस इज, देर आर सम सोर्सेस, जैसे लक्ष्मीकांत है पॉलिटी के लिए, है ना। इट आई काइंड ऑफ फील कि उसको रिप्लेस नहीं करना चाहिए। लक्ष्मीकांत हमें यूज करना चाहिए, बट देन देर आर अदर सब्जेक्ट्स जहां पे बहुत अच्छे सोर्सेस अवेलेबल नहीं है, जैसे साइंस टेक। साइंस टेक के लिए देयर इज नो, तो उसके लिए व्हाट विल इंश्योर इज यू विल नॉट रेफर एनीथिंग फॉर साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी। वी विल इंश्योर यू कि आपको जो स्टडी मटेरियल मिलेगा दैट विल बी मोर देन इनफ, है ना। ऐसे ही वैसे हिस्ट्री के लिए एनसीईआरटी आर गुड सोर्स, बट व्हाट निखिल सर डज इज एनसीईआरटी के जितने भी इंपॉर्टेंट डायमेंशन, जितने भी काम की चीजें हैं, वो निखिल सर अपने नोट्स में डाल के रखेंगे। आर यू गेटिंग इट? तो लिसन टू व्हाट टीचर सेज। हर टीचर का अपना अलग अलग स्ट्रैटेजी होगा। जैसे एज अ टीचर मैं आपको जीएस 3 पढ़ाने आऊंगा, साइंस एनवायरमेंट इकोनॉमी, एंड आई विल नॉट रेफर यू एनी, आई विल नॉट आस्क यू टू बाय एनी बुक्स। मैं आपको खुद कोई भी बुक अगर इंपॉर्टेंट है, काम की है, आई विल गो थ्रू इट, उसकी काम की चीजें आपके मटेरियल में रहेगी, स्टडी मटेरियल में, है ना। मेरा ये मानना है कि स्टूडेंट के पास एक सोर्स होना चाहिए जिसे उन्होंने अच्छे से पढ़ के चार्ट रखा है, मतलब कुछ नहीं छोड़ा है उसमें, रादर देन 10 चीजें रखने का। तो मेरा तरीका थोड़ा सा अलग है, हर टीचर का अपना तरीका होगा। यू कैन फॉलो दैट, एंड वी गिव अ लॉट ऑफ फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी टू टीचर्स। हम बोलते हैं सबसे अच्छा पढ़ाना है, आप बताओ कैसे पढ़ाओगे, एंड अकॉर्डिंगली वी डिजाइन द कोर्स, रादर देन हर टीचर को इम्पोज कर देना कि 5 लेक्चर में खत्म करना है। We had seen this problem in the past. Nikhil sir used to teach in the biggest institution in the country. वो वहां पे आर्ट एंड कल्चर पढ़ाते थे, पर उन्हें बोला गया कि 5 लेक्चर में आर्ट एंड कल्चर खत्म करो। निखिल सर ने बोला ये तो नहीं हो पाएगा। वो तो बस नाम नाम के लिए आर्ट एंड कल्चर में पांच पांच लेक्चर्स में खत्म कर सकता हूँ, 7 लेक्चर्स में खत्म कर सकता हूँ। निखिल सर आपके लिए 20-25 लेक्चर लेंगे, क्योंकि ही थिंक्स कि इतना करने की जरूरत है इन ऑर्डर टू कंप्लीटली डू द सिलेबस। तो स्टडी मटेरियल हम आपको प्रोवाइड करेंगे, सारी रिलेवेंट चीजें प्रोवाइड करेंगे, बट जहां पे टीचर स्टैंडर्ड बुक बोल रहा है, आप उस स्टैंडर्ड बुक को रेफर करिए, बट सिर्फ उसको रेफर करिए, इधर उधर मत चाहिए। न्यूज़पेपर्स में कितना टाइम स्पेंड करना है? न्यूज़पेपर्स में एवरी डे 45 मिनट्स टू 1 आवर। We do not spend more time than this on newspaper. Should we start making notes out of newspaper? देखो, एक मिस्टेक दैट ऑल ऑफ अस डू इन द बिगिनिंग ऑफ आवर प्रिपरेशन, हम टॉपर्स की वीडियोस देखते हैं, टॉपर्स बोलते हैं न्यूज़पेपर से नोट्स बनाना बहुत जरूरी है। यस, बट एक बात समझो, अभी आपने इकोनॉमिक्स पढ़ना शुरू नहीं किया, अभी आपको जीडीपी, जीएनपी, इन्फ्लेशन, पीएसयूज की प्रॉब्लम, एफडीआई, एफआईआईज, ये सारी चीजें नहीं पता है। Now, when you'll read the newspaper and you'll read these things, you'll not understand most of the things. So, while making notes, what you'll end up doing, इन सबके बेसिक्स को समझने की कोशिश करते रहोगे और बहुत सारा टाइम स्पेंड कर दोगे। बट आफ्टर 2-3 months when you'll study these things, you'll be like, अरे यार ये मैंने नोट्स में ये सारी चीजें, ये तो बेसिक्स था ही ना, मेरे को इस न्यूज़पेपर आर्टिकल से बस एक सिंपल ये लाइन लेनी थी, बाकी सब तो हमने पढ़ा ही था ना। तो यू रिग्रेट इट लेटर कि मैंने न्यूज़पेपर के नोट्स बनाए या फिर मैंने क्या कर दिया, मैंने बेसिक्स के नोट्स बना लिए, क्योंकि अभी ना वो चीजें आती नहीं है। तो नोट, अगर आपको न्यूज़पेपर से नोट्स निकालना है, सिर्फ उन सब्जेक्ट्स का निकालो जिनके बेसिक्स खत्म हो चुके हैं क्लास में, बाकी का मत निकालो। बाकी का जनरल अवेयरनेस के लिए पढ़ते रहो। जैसे आपकी जब इकोनॉमी क्लास में खत्म हो जाए, देखो जब इकोनॉमी क्लास में खत्म होगी ना, उस टाइम तक का करंट अफेयर्स भी मैं क्लास में इंक्लूड कर दूंगा। आपको उसके बाद लगता है अगले दिन न्यूज़पेपर, अरे सर ने एफडीआई पढ़ा तो दिया, बट एफडीआई में कुछ नया डेटा आ गया है न्यूज़पेपर में, लेट मी एड इट इन माय नोट्स, सो दैट एक ही जगह पे एफडीआई, रादर देन पूरा आर्टिकल कॉपी पेस्ट कर लेना। पूरा आर्टिकल कॉपी पेस्ट कर लेते हैं हम अदरवाइज, बिकॉज वी डू नॉट अंडरस्टैंड दी फंडामेंटल्स। जब आपको फंडामेंटल समझ में आएंगे, आप बोलो अरे ये तो पता है, ये पता है, ये पता है, ये पता है, ये क्या बोल रहे हैं, ये अरे ये नया पैरामीटर है, ये नई डेफिनेशन है कोई, लेट मी ऐड इट। तो स्पेंड 45 मिनट्स टू 1 आवर ऑन न्यूज़पेपर। हमारा एक करंट अफेयर्स का चैनल है, वहां हम न्यूज़पेपर आर्टिकल्स भी पोस्ट करते हैं। शाम को न्यूज़पेपर उठाओ, सुबह सुबह मत उठाओ, डू इट इन द इवनिंग। सुबह सुबह फोकस करो ऑन रिवाइजिंग कोर एरियाज, अपने ऑप्शनल, अपना जीएस। शाम को उठाओ, देखो क्या है। हमारे करंट अफेयर्स चैनल पे न्यूज़पेपर आर्टिकल्स पोस्ट हो जाएंगे, हिंदू एक्सप्रेस दोनों के आर्टिकल्स पोस्ट होते हैं। उनमें से कोई भी एक न्यूज़पेपर लेके उन आर्टिकल्स को रीड करना अच्छे से, बाकी न्यूज़पेपर को फ्लिप करना कि वैसी दुनिया में क्या चल रहा है। ठीक है, तो न्यूज़पेपर्स पे क्लैरिटी है, स्टडी मटेरियल पे क्लैरिटी है। सम टीचर्स विल प्रोवाइड स्टडी मटेरियल, सम टीचर्स विल रेफर टू, वो क्लास में पढ़ाएंगे आपको, और आपको क्या रेफर करेंगे, आपको स्टैंडर्ड बुक रेफर करेंगे, आप उसको यूज करोगे। एंड पूरा प्रोसेस फॉलो करो। देखो, प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड योर सीनियर्स एंड एवरीवन वुड गाइड यू इन अ डिफरेंट वे, बिकॉज दे वर नॉट स्टूडेंट्स एट लेवल अप आईएएस। लेवल अप आईएएस पे हम एक डिफरेंट फिलोसफी फॉलो करते हैं। अगर बच्चा हमारा है तो उसकी सारी जिम्मेदारी हमारी है। वी विल नॉट से कि बेटा आपको आंसर राइटिंग प्रैक्टिस तो अलग से जाके करनी पड़ेगी। अरे नहीं, आप प्रोसेस को फॉलो करो, आप आंसर राइटिंग प्रैक्टिस भी करोगे। वी विल नॉट टेल यू कि बेटा प्रीलिम्स टेस्ट सीरीज तो आपको अलग से ज्वाइन करना, नहीं नहीं, हम कराएंगे। हम आपको क्लास में सारे पीवाईक्यूज कराएंगे, हम आपको हर संडे 50 क्वेश्चंस कराएंगे। जनवरी से एवरी वीक विल हैव 5 टेस्ट्स, 50 क्वेश्चंस का, एंड देन संडे को 100 क्वेश्चंस का टेस्ट। विल मेक श्योर दैट यू आर डूइंग एवरीथिंग दैट इज नीडेड। हम आपकी पूरी जिम्मेदारी ले रहे हैं, ना कि बस हम जीएस जीएस के सब्जेक्ट्स पढ़ा के चले जाएंगे, नहीं। That's not our responsibility, and that is why the guidance which a person gives to you who has not been part of Level Up IAS Foundation program will not be suitable here. Why would it not be suitable here? Because वो जिस प्रोसेस के थ्रू गए थे वो प्रोसेस अलग था। आप जिस प्रोसेस के थ्रू जाने वाले हो, दैट प्रोसेस इज गोइंग टू बी डिफरेंट। जो आपका फ्लैटमेट सजेशन दे रहा है, उसके टीचर ने जो सजेशन दिया है, दैट, या उसके मेंटर ने जो सजेशन दिया है, दैट सजेशन में नॉट बी एप्लीकेबल ऑन यू, बिकॉज दैट स्टूडेंट इज नॉट स्टडिंग एट लेवल अप। उनके मेंटर बोल सकते हैं कि नहीं, ये 3 किताबें रीड करो, आर्ट एंड कल्चर में एनसीईआरटी विल नॉट बी गुड इनफ। बट आपके टीचर बोलेंगे बेटा मैंने 10 रीड कर ली हैं, 10 की सारी चीजें आपके नोट्स में है, पहले ये तो इंश्योर करो जो नोट्स में लिखा है वो आता है। समझ में आ रहा है? तो बात सुन लेनी है सबकी, बट करना वो है जो आपके टीचर्स आपको यहां पे गाइड कर रहे हैं। है ना? पूरी क्लैरिटी है सबको? तो ये आई वांट टू से ऑल दीज थिंग्स बिकॉज यहीं पे सब गड़बड़ करते हैं। आप अभी मार्केट में जाओगे, 10 इंस्टीट्यूशन का स्टडी मटेरियल देखोगे, 10 किताबें देखोगे, एंड यू विल बी अट्रैक्टेड। प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड, सब वही कर रहे हैं, बट 99% of the students who will apply for this exam will not even clear preliminary examination. You do not have to be amongst those 99% people. Are we getting this? हमें उन 99% बच्चों में नहीं जाना है, हमें उन 1% बच्चों में जाना है। वो 1% बच्चे कौन होते हैं? जो अपनी स्ट्रैटेजी बना के उस पर कंसिस्टेंटली काम कर रहे होते हैं। सबकी अलग अलग स्ट्रैटेजी होती है, सबका अलग अलग मेथड होता है। एनी टॉपर विल नॉट गिव यू द सेम थिंग टू से, कि मैंने ये किया था, दूसरे ने भी ये किया, तीसरे ने भी ये किया, ऐसा नहीं होता है सबकी। पर एक चीज जो इंपॉर्टेंट रहती है, उन्होंने फोकस से सेम चीज को बार बार रिवाइज किया, उन्होंने कंसिस्टेंटली मैंने रोज 10 घंटे पढ़ाई करी, मैंने रोज 8 घंटे पढ़ाई करी, मैंने रोज 12 घंटे पढ़ाई करी, ये रहेगा. दिस विल बी कॉमन. स्टडी मटेरियल विल नॉट बी कॉमन, कोचिंग विल नॉट बी कॉमन. व्हाट विल बी कॉमन? दीज एस्पेक्ट्स विल बी कॉमन. समझ में आ रहा है? तो और कुछ आप जानना चाहते हैं बिफोर आई आस्क बाबू सर टू कम एंड स्टार्ट टेकिंग क्लासेस? और कुछ भी अबाउट द प्रोग्राम दैट यू मे हैव डाउट अबाउट? ये बच्चा मास्क लगा के जो बैठा है इधर उधर देख रहा है, फोकस. कोई भी चीज आप पूछना चाहते हैं कि ये कब होगा, ये कब पढ़ाया जाएगा, ये कैसे होगा, पूछ लीजिए. अदरवाइज आप लोगों के पास मेरा नंबर है, आप लोगों के पास मेरा नंबर है, आप मुझे मैसेज भी कर दीजिए, व्हाट्सएप मैसेज कर दीजिए. मैं रात में कोशिश करता हूँ 10-11 बजे बिफोर आई स्टार्ट माई नाइट सेशन फॉर स्टडीज, मैं उन मैसेजेस का रिप्लाई कर दूं. आप मुझे व्हाट्सएप मैसेज करिए, कोई भी डाउट होता है आप पहले अपने मेंटर से पूछिए. डोंट मेक मी योर प्राइमरी सोर्स, बिकॉज देन मैं क्या हो जाऊंगा, मैं आप रादर देन डीलिंग विथ मोर इंपॉर्टेंट डाउट्स, मैं सारे डाउट्स में रिजॉल्व करने लगूंगा तो मैं पढ़ नहीं पाऊंगा. आई हैव टू स्टडी अ लॉट. अनफॉर्चुनेटली मैं करंट अफेयर्स का टीचर हूँ, मेरा सिलेबस कभी पूरा नहीं होता है. तो आई हैव टू स्टडी अ लॉट एंड दैट इज व्हाई डू नॉट come to me for anything which could have been done by going to the admin. कोर्स एक्सेस में प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है, अरे ऑफिस में कॉल करो, टेक टीम से कॉल करो, राइट? उसके लिए मेरी जरूरत नहीं है. एकेडमिकली कोई दिक्कत हो रही है, आपका 24 आवर्स में प्रॉब्लम रिजॉल्व नहीं हो रहा है, देन यू मैसेज मी, देन यू टॉक अबाउट, देन यू टॉक टू मी. ओके. स्टडी प्लान क्या होना चाहिए? अब देखो सिंपल सा है. हाफ ऑफ योर डे शुड गो टू जीएस, हाफ ऑफ द डे शुड गो टू ऑप्शनल. आप सबने ऑप्शनल ले लिया है, ऑप्शनल डिसाइड कर दिया है, अब कर लो. अब यू कैन नॉट डिले इट फर्दर. मार्च में जिन लोगों ने शुरू किया या जनवरी में जिन लोगों ने शुरू किया, दे मे हैव डिलेड इट सो फार, बट अब कर लो. हाफ ऑफ योर डे शुड गो ऑन दिस, हाफ ऑफ द डे शुड गो ऑन दिस. आप बोलोगे सर कई जब 2 क्लासेस एक दिन में हो जाएंगी उस दिन क्या करेंगे? हाफ ऑफ द डे मीन्स 2 आवर्स ऑफ क्लासेस, 2.5 आवर्स ऑफ क्लासेस, 2.5 आवर्स ऑफ रिविजन. ये आधा दिन हो गया. यहाँ पे 2.5 आवर्स ऑफ क्लासेस, 2.5 आवर्स ऑफ रिविजन. दिस इज योर स्टडी प्लान. सर जब यहाँ पे 2 क्लासेस हो जाएंगी तो मैं क्या करूंगा? 5 आवर्स की क्लासेस हो गई तो मैं क्या करूंगा? तब भी आप क्या करोगे? 1 आवर रिविजन करोगे. आप दिन में 10 घंटे पढ़ते हो तो दिन में 11 घंटे पढ़ने का प्लान बनाओ. 1 आवर रिविजन, हाफ एन आवर फॉर वन क्लास, हाफ एन आवर फॉर अनदर क्लास. सैटरडे को बैठ के ज्यादा रिविजन करोगे, होगा, ये करना पड़ेगा. और कोई ऑल्टरनेटिव नहीं है. वी कैन नॉट कीप टेकिंग क्लासेस इन मार्च अप्रैल में, फिर सिलेक्शन नहीं होता है. मार्च अप्रैल में बस करंट अफेयर्स क्लासेस. अब करंट अफेयर्स तो अप्रैल एंड तक का कवर करना है, तो वो क्लासेस मार्च अप्रैल में होगी. बट फरवरी के बाद आपकी जीएस की क्लासेस नहीं होनी चाहिए. यू शुड गो ऑन रिविजन रिविजन रिविजन. Okay. Now, some online students, sir, should we map what we are learning by syllabus key points? Yes. सिलेबस को अपने सामने लगा के रखो एंड कीप ऑन पुटिंग अ टिक मार्क ऑन एवरी बुलेट पॉइंट ऑफ द सिलेबस. जैसे जैसे वो पोर्शन खत्म होता है, कीप ऑन पुटिंग दैट टिक मार्क. एट द एंड ऑफ द ईयर यू शुड बी लाइक पूरा सिलेबस मेरा हो चुका है. उसको बहुत ध्यान से करना है. कैन वी गेट एन ओवरव्यू ऑफ विच शेड्यूल ऑफ विच सब्जेक्ट्स विल बी कवर्ड व्हेन? अनिश्चय भेज सकते हो बेटा, आप लोगों के ग्रुप में डाल देंगे. कब कब तक भेज दोगे? आज डाल देंगे. ठीक है. आज हम आपको अलग अलग बैचेस हैं तो उनका अलग अलग शेड्यूल होगा थोड़ा सा, बट रफ ओवरव्यू दे देंगे. कई बार क्या होता है कोई टीचर 2 क्लासेस कम लेता है, 2 क्लासेस ज्यादा लेते हैं, वो सब हो जाता है. बट रफ ओवरव्यू विच क्लासेस वुड बी डन विल प्रोवाइड, है ना? वर्किंग प्रोफेशनल्स के लिए टाइम टेबल बेटा, मैकेनिज्म यही रहेगा. अगर वर्किंग प्रोफेशनल हो और 2027 में एग्जाम देना है तो आपके पास सपोज 6 आवर्स है, यू हैव 3 आवर्स फॉर ऑप्शनल, 3 आवर्स फॉर जीएस. आप ऑनलाइन क्लास देखोगे, थोड़ा सा स्पीड बढ़ा के देखना, सो दैट 2 आवर्स में यू आर फिनिशिंग योर क्लासेस, 1 आवर में यू आर फिनिशिंग योर रिविजन, 2 आवर्स में यू आर फिनिशिंग योर क्लासेस, 1 आवर में यू आर फिनिशिंग योर रिविजन. क्या ये करा जा सकता है? करा जा सकता है. आइडियल प्रिपरेशन जो वर्किंग एस्पिरेंट्स होते हैं उनको मैं 2 साल का बोलता हूँ, आइडियल वो है. बट क्या 1 साल में पढ़ के करा जा सकता है? हाँ करा जा सकता है, बस आपको सैटरडे संडे सैक्रिफाइस कर देना पड़ेगा. जो आप जॉब में फ्राइडे को पार्टी करने जा रहे हो और सैटरडे संडे थोड़ा एंजॉय ज्यादा कर लेते हो, सैटरडे संडे ज्यादा डिसिप्लिन रहना पड़ेगा. सैटरडे संडे आपको ऑफिस और पढ़ाई के अलावा सिर्फ पढ़ाई उससे ज्यादा देर करनी पड़ेगी, तो वो हो सकता है, बट प्लान यही रहेगा अभी से till December, half of the time for GS, half of the time for optional. After December, we'll give entire time to GS so that when we'll jump onto the prelims preparation. Okay, तो I hope सबको clarity है. Yes. नहीं, timings will be, देखो अभी our optional classes are in the second half. GS classes आपकी first half में, तो GS की आपकी extra class भी होगी, वो 11 बजे होगी. We will not do this. हाँ, overlap क्यों करेंगी, है ना? Abhi, our optional classes, all the optional classes are happening after 2 p.m. We have kept it like that so that GS और optional में overlap ना हो. You have a different, कितने बजे से classes है? 12 to 2. तो इनके केस में क्या है? He has a but आप कौन से बैच? अप्रैल में आपकी एक्स्ट्रा क्लासेस कम होंगी, और अगर उस जैसे इनके केस में क्या है, इनका ऑप्शनल और जीएस में ओवरलैप हो सकता है कभी कभी जब ऑप्शनल जीएस के एक्स्ट्रा क्लासेस हो. एक तो अप्रैल बैच में बहुत कम एक्स्ट्रा क्लास होंगी, वो 60 days आगे हैं पहले ही. दूसरा, इवन इफ दैट हैपेंस, व्हाट ही कैन डू इज, ये 12 to 2 अपनी ऑप्शनल की क्लासेस करेंगे जाके अटेंड प्रॉपरली, और फिर ये अज्यूम करेंगे कि इनकी जीएस की क्लासेस कितने बजे से, 3 से 5 या 3 से 6, एंड घर पे यू विल हैव ऑनलाइन एक्सेस. यू हैव ऑनलाइन एक्सेस फॉर द क्लासेस. अब घर पे 3 से 5 बैठ के, ये कि नहीं मेरी क्लास ही है, मुझे वैसे ही करना है, वो कंप्लीट करेंगे, एंड देन वो 1 hour ऑफ रिविजन अकॉर्डिंगली. जीएस में तो सबको ऑनलाइन एक्सेस मिला है, ऑप्शनल के केस में वी डोंट डू दैट. ऑफलाइन स्टूडेंट्स डोंट गेट ऑनलाइन एक्सेस, बट जीएस के केस में बोथ ऑफलाइन ऑनलाइन एक्सेस आर देयर. Now, Sadaf has a question कि we have completed syllabus of modern history and its tests are also done. अब 2 नए सब्जेक्ट स्टार्ट हो रहे हैं, तो we will start forgetting मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री. नहीं बेटा, यू विल नॉट स्टार्ट फॉरगेटिंग मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री, डोंट वरी. अभी जब आपका क्वार्टरली वाला टेस्ट आएगा ना, उसमें मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री भी डालेंगे. अभी पॉलिटी आईआर के टेस्ट चलेंगे, बट पॉलिटी आईआर के टेस्ट जब आखिरी में खत्म होगा, एक पॉलिटी आईआर का फुल टेस्ट, उसके बाद एक टेस्ट का क्या आएगा, पॉलिटी आईआर और मॉडर्न का फुल टेस्ट. इट विल गो लाइक दैट, तो डोंट वरी अबाउट इट. हमने बोला है ना कि आप क्या करो, आप बस प्रोसेस को फॉलो करो, वी विल मेक यू रिवाइज थिंग्स. ओके, चलिए अब बाबू सर बोलेंगे. आपने 15-20 मिनट बोले थे, आपने 40 मिनट ले ली, मुझे डांट पड़ जाएगी, तो आई स्टॉप दिस सेशन हेयर. फिर भी कोई भी दिक्कत हो, कोई भी परेशानी हो, यू हैव माई नंबर, एंड मैं आपको दिन भर ऑफिस में मिल ही जाता हूँ, बट अगर आप सुबह मैसेज करके आ जाएंगे तो मैं आपको कोई टाइम एलोकेट कर दूंगा और मिलना आसान हो जाता है. अगर मैसेज करके नहीं आएंगे, क्योंकि आई आई स्टडी, मैं आपको प्रॉमिस कर रहा हूं, आपकी प्रिपरेशन में आपसे ज्यादा पढ़ाई मैं करूंगा एवरी डे. तो आई हैव टू स्टडी अ लॉट, एंड देयरफॉर वो चीजें मैं नहीं कर पाता कि मैं 24 घंटे आपके लिए बस खड़ा हूं बाहर कि हाँ बोलो ना बोलो, नहीं, मुझे पढ़ना होता है. और आप सब भी पढ़ना है, एक टाइम लेके आओ, ये नहीं टीचर से मिलने आए, टीचर मिल नहीं पाए, वो टाइम लेके आओ, उस टाइम पे मिलेंगे, समय बर्बाद नहीं करेंगे. ओके, चलिए, थैंक यू वेरी मच. अभी बाबू सर विल कम एंड टेक योर पॉलिटी क्लासेस.
Good morning to all of you. So, I think for some of you, this is the first class. And for, I think, some of you already, some of the subject has already started. Anyone, how many of you in this class for whom this is the first class? I mean, this is, now you are just starting. All right. For some of you, the other subjects are already commenced. Just want to know in this batch, how many of you have got some knowledge pre-existing probably in polity? Some of you might have some background in political science. Some of you might have some background in law. So how many of you have such background? Please raise your hand. Please raise your hand. So not many students. Okay. What is your background? Have you been already in any of the classes? Which batch? So then you, okay. All right. So most of you, I assume that you do not have any background, probably. So how many of you from science background? So most of you. All right. So, but you don't have to worry about all those things because, anyways, UPSC will try to provide a level playing field. It's just that initially, probably you may find some little difficulty. But however, if you choose to follow the classes properly, ask your doubts, if you do your work properly, then it is mostly a level playing field. Because UPSC is not going to ask you a very in-depth question. Probably they'll stick to the basics, especially when it comes to the prelims examination. Main says basic plus some form of application. So that is what is expected. And by the time you go to the mains examination, you will develop that ability if you are clearing a prelims examination. But initially, you will have to stick to the basics. So we will start from the basics. Initially, the first few classes might be relatively little slow because I do understand some of the students may not have any understanding. But as we'll proceed, we'll pick up the pace. Probably after a few classes, we will try to pick up the pace. That is how we'll go. Okay. So I've been teaching the subject for more than 10 years now. And even before that, I have been preparing for the subject and all those things for more than 7 to 8 years. So it is overall an experience of almost a couple of decades. So in UPSC and specifically with regard to polity in teaching itself, it is more than 10 years now. All right. So with that, we'll just begin the subject. All right. Okay. So before I proceed, do you know what is the weightage of this subject? I hope it is audible to all the online students. Before I proceed. All right. What is the weightage of the subject polity in your prelims examination? When UPSC does not give any surety that these many questions are going to come from a particular subject, UPSC can keep changing it, and that is, I think, that is how UPSC exam becomes unpredictable. But yes, on an average, can you guess me if you got any idea how many questions are coming in the prelims examination? 8 to? So 8 to 10 is a very conservative thing. On an average, if you see, except for this year, that is the 2026 prelims, where I think they've just asked only 4 to 5 questions. And not only for polity, for most of the subjects that has happened, because it is considered to be one of the toughest prelims paper that has happened in the last decade, probably. Even geography also 4 to 5 questions, economic also very less questions. Only history has got a substantial number of questions, but that too on a very difficult side they've asked it. But otherwise, polity approximately 15 questions are likely to come. And whatever has happened this year, it is not going to be a norm. It is just an exception. So the norm is normally 15 to 16 question is what? That means around 30 marks is going to come from polity, and that plays a very, very important role in your prelim selection. And if you understand polity, most of the things you can take it from the class itself. So it's just that you'll have to go revise. But if you feel that you know the subject and you don't give due attention to the particular subject, this is also one subject where you can easily make mistakes. Lot of things, sometimes students feel that they know the subject, but they tend to make a lot of mistakes. So therefore, it's also very important that you try to understand all the concepts very clearly. All right. And what is the weightage of, again, polity as a subject in your mains? Because it is one paper which has application both in prelims as well as in the mains examination. So can anyone tell me this polity paper is part of which paper? GS paper 2, very good. And how much mark do you think that it will, uh, how much marks the questions will come in GS paper 2 from polity? So approximately, again, there approximately on an average 100 to 125 marks in your GS paper 2. So there are years they have asked up to 125 marks, and remaining 70-75 marks comes from the subject like governance and social justice, and around 50 marks it comes from the international relations. So overall it is 250 marks. So there also around 125 marks out of 1000 marks in your GS paper, that is GS paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, 125 marks is likely to again come from polity. That means 1/8 of your mark is again likely to come from polity. In your prelims, if I put it on a higher side, around 1/6 of your mark is going to come from polity. That is on the higher side. Even if you go less also, 1/8 of the marks, at least 25 marks is likely to come from polity. So that's the weightage of polity for both your prelims as well as your mains and mains examination. But in addition to that, it also helps you to understand your rights. It also helps you to understand your liabilities, your obligations, to help you to perform effectively as a civil servant once you get into the service. Otherwise, also as a general citizen, also it makes you much aware of your fundamental rights, your legal rights, your obligation towards the fellow citizens, your allegiance towards the state. So all those things will get clarified as you follow the classes. Is it clear to all of you? So with that, we'll move to the uh, first topic. That's what I wanted to teach today. Is what is the constitution? So that's the first thing, because what we are going to study in the entire class is basically the constitution of India. So the first thing is, the question is, what is a constitution? I'll come back to this particular question as to what is a constitution. So before I come to this particular question, what is your understanding of what is a constitution? Very good. A constitution is a set of rules and regulations according to which a country is governed. So basically, what is a constitution? I can say, put it in a very simple way. Constitution. Yes. Do you have any answers? What is your name? The person who's in the last. Yes. Uh, you have been continuously smiling. There's nothing wrong in smiling, but do not do it inside the class unnecessarily. All right. If something is asked, you try to answer to that. Try to follow the class. Unnecessarily smiling does not give any meaning inside the class. Okay. So it has no relevance in the class, anyways. All right. So, can anyone tell me what is the constitution? So, constitution is fundamentally what? It is a set of rules and regulations based on which the country is governed. Okay, so before I go to the constitution, so basically, to put it in a very simple way, constitution is a rule book. But constitution is not the only rule book based on which the country is governed. So therefore, what is an appropriate way of putting the constitution is, the constitution is the fundamental rule book of the country. That's basically what is a constitution, to put it in a very, very simple way. If you see constitution as a document, it has a number of rules. So based on which the entire country is governed. So that is what we say as a constitution. But even before we understand the concept of the constitution, so can anyone tell me today how you come to the institution? Some of you might have used the public transport system. Some of you might have used your own private vehicle. So whatever it is, you'll have to follow certain things. So probably how many of you have taken a public transport system, either a metro or any other public transport system? Okay, so can you just describe, when you've taken the public transport system, you've taken a metro or a bus or any other public metro. So what are the things that probably you have to follow when you take up the metro? Probably you'll have to go for a security check. Security, after the security check is over, probably you should have got the ticket, or you should have got a pass. And then when you come out also, you'll have to exit through a security check. If not the security check, that you'll have to exit through a particular system. Now, can you say that you will not follow all those things if you have to travel in the metro? That means if you have to travel in a public transport system, there are certain set of rules that is already there. Say, for example, if you come in a private vehicle, let us assume, now you'll have to stop at appropriate places because the signals are there. You'll have to stop in the signal. So these are all rules that is there. But try to understand that these rules, if I have to put it in the form of a question, whatever I said, are these rules mentioned in the constitution? Or these rules, whatever I told, that someone comes in a public transport, comes to the appropriate place wherever they want to go, are they mentioned in the constitution? No, they are not mentioned in the constitution. That means you'll have to understand there are a lot of rules based on which our country is governed. But not everything is mentioned in the Constitution of India. Because the Constitution of India deals with only the most important rules based on which the country is governed. But the Constitution or whatever rules that is given in the Constitution is not the only law, or it is not the only rule based on which the country is governed. In addition to that, also there are a lot of other rules. Is it clear to all of you? So the appropriate way as to how we will put the Constitution is the fundamental rule book of our country. It contains the most important rules. Say, for example, if you ask me the question, how the government is to be constituted in our country, that is mentioned in the Constitution. Because unless and until we know what kind of government is to be constituted, how you can govern such a large country. So that is a very, very important rule that is mentioned in the Constitution. Okay, so not only how the government will be constituted, what are the powers and functions of that particular government at a larger level? Where it is there, it is given in the Constitution. Okay, apart from the government, is there a need for any other institutions for our country to be governed? That the government is not the only institution. Apart from the government of India, there can be multiple other institutions in our country. So, can you give me an example of institutions that is in our country apart from the government of India? Yes, very good. Public Service Commission. But I'm just looking about the most important institutions apart from the government. Of course, the Public Service Commission or UPSC is a very, very important institution. I'm not undermining the importance of that particular institution. But there are far more important institutions apart from that, apart from the government of India. Very good. Institution of Judiciary. Not just the Supreme Court, the institution of Judiciary is there. Supreme Court and High Courts apart from the government of India. Is there any other institution? Parliament, very good. The legislative institutions are there, Parliament, the state legislature, and all those things. So you have the government, you have the institutions like judiciary, you have the institutions like legislature, that is the Parliament. Apart from that, you have a lot of other independent institutions like, say, the Election Commission of India, the Union Public Service Commission. But how do we know that these institutions are there in our country? Who provides for all these institutions? It is the Constitution of India that provides for all these institutions. Who let us know as to what are their powers and functions? What are they supposed to do in our country? It is again given in the Constitution of India. Therefore, if you see what is a constitution, the constitution is the fundamental rule book of our country. Is it clear to all of you? And that fundamental rule book tells us how the government is to be constituted, what are the powers and functions of that particular government, and then the next thing is what are the other institutions apart from the government, what are the powers and functions of the other institutions under the apart from the government of India. But it is not only that, these are the things that the constitution says. Most importantly, the constitution also says what are the limitations upon this particular government. Do not think that the government, if its powers are not restricted, the government become arbitrary in nature. So therefore, the constitution also deals with what kind of restriction shall be imposed upon the government. And to put some restrictions upon the powers of the government, the constitution also provides for what is called as rights upon the citizens. In fact, it is a constitution that provides the rights to the people. So the constitution is also the source of the rights to the people. So based on the rights, indirectly it put limitation upon whom? It put limitation upon the government. To put it in a very simple way, so can you tell me any of the fundamental right that you know under the Constitution of India? For some students who do not have any idea, no issues. We are going to deal with all those things. But just to explain the concept of Constitution, I'm taking some input from your side. So can anyone tell me the fundamental right that you may exercise under the Constitution? Any one fundamental right? Right to? Okay, somebody is telling right to equality, somebody is saying right to freedom of speech and expression. Now, for example, under the right to freedom of speech and expression, the courts have already made it very clear. We also have the right, as a citizen of India, we have the right to criticize the government. So, suppose some policies are there, the government has brought in. What is our right? We also have the right to criticize them. It can always be a criticism. So, criticism doesn't mean that you are an anti-national. Criticism doesn't mean that you are not patriotic. Criticism means that you are trying to improve upon the system, whatever you feel. Therefore, is it possible for the state to arrest and punish someone just because they have criticized the state? It is not possible because it is provided as a fundamental right to the citizens. Therefore, what this fundamental right helps to do, the fundamental rights in turn try to restrict whom? Restrict the powers of the state from arbitrarily exercising their powers. Therefore, all these things are what you should understand as to the Constitution of India. Is that clear to all of you? So basically, what is a constitution? Just write down a line as to what is a constitution. So initially, we'll be little slow. I'll try to make you understand the basics. Then we'll catch up on, because understanding the basics becomes very, very important. So write down what is a constitution. The constitution is the fundamental rule book of our country. The constitution is the fundamental rule book of our country. The constitution is the fundamental rule book of the country. It provides, it provides, it provides details related to government formation. It provides details related to government formation, comma, their powers and functions, their powers and functions, their powers and functions, and also other institutions, and also other institutions along with their powers and functions, and also details about other institutions. Just write down one more word, and also details about other institutions along with their powers and functions, along with their powers and functions. Further, the constitution by providing the rights to the citizens, also try to restrict the arbitrary authority of the state. Further, the constitution also, by providing rights, try to restrict the arbitrary authority of the state. Therefore, the basic understanding you should have is, without a constitution, can a country function? It cannot function, because it is a constitution that provides the most important rules. So, for example, today, if I ask you the question, what kind of government do we have in India? It's a democratic government. Very good. But democratic government, basically, the simplest understanding you should have is, any democratic government is a government which is elected by the people. But how do you know that the government in India should only be a democratic government? Can we have any other form of government? So, for example, across the world, we do not only have democratic government. If you take North Korea, there is no democratic government there. So, for example, in some of the Middle East countries, there's no democratic governments. In North Korea, if you see, there is an autocratic rule. In some of the Middle East countries like Saudi Arabia, there's no democratic elections. There's a monarchy. The king and the queen, or probably they come from a royal family, they run the country. But however, in India, always only one type of government we can have. What is the type of government we have? A democratic government. But why not other forms of government? Why the other forms of government is not possible in case of India? Because the Constitution of India does not allow for it. So therefore, the country has to be governed as per what? Whatever is laid down in the Constitution. All right. Okay. Then the next question is, okay, we have a democratically elected government. Now, in this democratically elected government, who is the most powerful person? Probably. Although the Constitution does not say anyone to be the powerful person, but we know that based on the powers and functions, someone becomes so prominent. So who is that particular person? Who is the most powerful person, probably, do you think? Is it the Prime Minister? Is it the President? Is it the Chief Justice of India? Is it the Chief Election Commissioner? Is it the Chairman of Union Public Service Commission? Is it the IAS officers? Is it the IPS officers? You might have different, probably, the idea. So can you probably say who is probably the most powerful person in your opinion? The opinion could vary, but let us try to understand. Who is the most powerful person? The President of India. Yes, somebody else? The bureaucrats. So probably your understanding is not appropriate when you say that the bureaucrats are the most powerful person. In fact, the bureaucrats are nowhere mentioned in the constitution itself. So in a democracy, now try to understand always it is the political executives who are more powerful, not what is called as the permanent executives. Of course, the bureaucrats' role is very important. I'm not denying the fact. So without the bureaucrat, the country cannot function because they are the bedrock of our administrative system. That I agree. But the powers are not given to them much. In a democracy, the powers are usually vested in the elected representatives. The bureaucrats are someone who clear an examination. It's a merit-based examination. So though they play an important role, the direct power is not conferred upon them. Who has got the powers? It is a political executives, probably. Okay, somebody told me President of India. Is there any other opinion? Okay, of course, in a democracy, it is a citizen who has the power, but it is not that the only power that they exercise is that their right to vote. So once they vote in the election, they already delegated the power to somebody else, and again, you can definitely exercise your power when the next election comes. But yeah, on a day-to-day basis, are you powerful? That's my question. So definitely, citizens are at the center of any democratic constitution. But to say that the constitution is directly giving all the powers upon the citizens is also not appropriate. So I'm just trying to understand who exercise the power, the authority under the constitution. The most appropriate word would be authority. Who would be the most authoritative person? So I can take, okay, the president of India is one option. Anything else? The chief justice of India. Okay, then the parliament. No, I'm just looking for one particular authority. The parliament is an institution. I'm not looking for an institution probably here. The Prime Minister of India. Very good. Okay, then. Anybody else? All right. Very good. So theoretically, it is the President of India, and practically, I think you've got some kind of understanding probably. So very good. So again, I wanted to make one thing very clear is that the Constitution does not say that he or she is the most powerful person. In fact, every single authority under the Constitution of India, they have a specific function to perform. But however, you know that whatever the function to be performed by the judiciary, apart from that, whatever is a function to be performed by the legislature, so probably the judiciary role is to look into the cases that is coming in front of the court. The role of the legislature is to make the laws and all those things. Apart from all those things, every other function has to be done by the executive. So do you know who is the head of the union executive? Who is considered to be the head of the union executive in our country? Head of all the executives. Okay, so the president under the constitution is the head of the union executive. Therefore, all the executive powers are vested in the hands of the president of India. But that doesn't mean that the president is a powerful person. Because under the constitution of India, the president is supposed to be only a nominal executive. For namesake, he is the head, but the real power is vested upon whom? The real power is vested upon the prime minister and the council of ministers. So the point that I'm trying to make is, how do we know all those things? We know all those things because that's what the constitution says. So it is the constitution which is a fundamental rule book, and as per whatever is given in the constitution, the country has to function. Is that clear to all of you? But that constitution also makes it very clear that apart from the government, what are the other institutions? And then this government should not become arbitrary. It doesn't mean that because a lot of power is conferred upon the president or the prime minister himself, they can function in an arbitrary manner. There has to be some checks upon what they are supposed to do, what they are not supposed to do. And that check comes in the form of restriction upon the powers of the state by giving rights to whom? By giving rights to the citizens. Somebody criticize the prime minister, somebody criticize the other ministers, it is not that immediately the government can act upon them or arrest them. If they are well within their rights, if they go beyond their rights, then there is no protection. If they are well within their rights, then there is protection. So all these things are given in the Constitution of India. But as I already said, the Constitution is not the only rule book. Apart from that, there are also a lot of other rules based on which the country is governed. Say, for example, I asked about when somebody is coming in the private vehicle or in public vehicle also on the roads, they have to stop at the traffic light. So most of you said that it is not there in the constitution, but it is also a rule that we are following. So where does that come from? What is that rule? Whatever is there in the constitution is the rule that is coming from the constitution. They're all called as what is called as constitutional law. Whatever is coming from the constitution directly is a constitutional law. But that's not the only law that we have in our country. We have other laws also, which helps us in carrying out the administration of our country. But which is the most important law? Whatever is there in the constitution. But apart from whatever is not there in the constitution, there are also certain other types of laws which we also follow. What is that called? BNSS is just an example of an other type of law. So what are the other types of law which is not there in the constitution? They are all called as ordinary laws. So basically what comes from the constitution is a constitutional law, but there are a lot of other rules or other laws outside the constitution. They are called as what type of laws? Ordinary laws. But to govern our country like India, not only in India, for any country for that particular matter, they'll have their own constitution, which out of which what comes as a constitutional law. But outside the constitution, they can have what is called as ordinary laws. But between these two things, which is more important, which is of highest degree, it is a constitutional law. So the constitutional law is more fundamental. So that is why it is called as a fundamental law of the country. Is it clear to all of you? So for example, when I ask about you'll have to stop at the traffic, that comes from an act which is called as a Motor Vehicle Act. The Motor Vehicle Act is a law that is passed by the parliament. That's an ordinary law. So to govern a country like India, we have one constitution. How many constitution do we have? We have one constitution and we have more than 1,000 laws in our country. I do not know the exact number. Probably it can be more than that also. But those are all only what is called as ordinary laws. And which is more important and more fundamental. It is a constitution of India. Do you know that how many articles are there in the constitution? Anybody? 395 is when the constitution came into force on 26 January 1950. We are today in 2026, 76 years after the commencement of the constitution. 448 is there in your text, some of your books, but that's outdated. 470. Okay, that is just before some of the 106th constitutional amendment happened. So presently we have 471 articles in the constitution. So if you see 471 articles, these are all only the major broader rules. But apart from that, there can be a lot of other laws in our country. All right. But the only thing that you have to keep in your mind is that any ordinary law cannot be in violation of the constitution. Because ordinary laws should always be in line with what? The fundamental laws. So between these two things, which is more important, which is more powerful? It is a constitution of India. Is that clear to all of you? So this is what basically you'll have to understand. So therefore, any country will have their own constitution. But politically, for a country, we'll not use a constitution for a country. We'll always use the word state. So in political science, the word that is preferred is basically what is called as a state. So India is also a state. So that's how we politically say that. So we should also understand the definition of this particular state. So because sometimes UPSC can ask this. Already they have asked it, although it is not directly related to the Constitution of India. Once they have asked it. So therefore, I wanted to clarify this concept of state. That means in political science, always we refer a particular country as a state, provided that it contains certain features, certain characteristics. So can anyone tell me what are the characteristics a state has to satisfy? There are 4 important characteristics a state has to satisfy if they are to be seen as a state. So what are the things? I think some of you might know it. So first of all, the state should be a sovereign state. Very good. Okay. Sovereignty. I'll explain them. It should be a sovereign state. And then it should have its own people. It should have its own community of people. And then it should have an established government. Not necessarily a democratic government, any form of government. So in India, we have a democratic government. That's okay. In North Korea, they do not have a democratic government. That doesn't mean that North Korea is not a state. They are also a state because they have their own established government. And then they have their own territory. So without all those things, if let us assume a nation is there, it cannot be called as a state. Only when any nation fulfills these characteristics. Otherwise, it is only that they are sharing a cultural and they are only sharing certain culture among them. But however, when you call certain entity as a state, only when it has its own people, they have its own people. That means that in any state they have their own citizens, and then they have an established government, they have a specific territory, and then the state is a sovereign authority. The state is in a democratic state, the sovereignty comes from the people. It is a people who are the powerful people. Now, that sovereign means, what do you mean by sovereign? Sovereign means that the state is a supreme authority, that the state cannot be compelled by any outsiders, any other nation, as to what they have to do. So that's what basically you have to understand. So politically, this is basically what is called as a state. So can we say India as a state? Does India satisfy all these criteria? So do they have the people of their own? Does it have an established government? Is that there is an established territory? And then is the state a sovereign state? In other words, can India be forced by others as to what should be the policy of India? So theoretically, that is not possible. We are a sovereign state. But for some practical considerations, sometimes in geopolitics, everything is so closely interrelated. So there may be some external pressure and all those things, but otherwise we are a sovereign state. Is that clear to all of you? This was once asked in UPSC examination. So just try to have a look into this particular question. So try to answer this particular question once asked in UPSC. Have a look into the question. So can anyone tell me which is it visible to all of you? Just look at there if it is not visible here. So those who are able to see it here, please have a look and tell me what is the correct answer. Take your time and then try to say. Although this is not purely part of polity, this is more related to political science, but UPSC has asked it. So therefore, we are in a position to learn. We cannot say UPSC that you cannot ask such questions, but rather the best thing is that we learn these things as well. So what is the answer here? A, B, C, and D. Which do you think is the most appropriate answer? A, somebody who says B, C, D. Okay, so which one of the following best defines the term state? What are the things we should have for a state? So first of all, we should have a people, community of people. Is it there a community of people here? Okay, so we do have a community of people. So first criteria is satisfied. Permanently occupying a definite territory. Territory is there. Yes, second criteria is satisfied. Independent of external control. What does it reflect? It reflects the idea of sovereignty. Yes. And possessing an organized government. All right. So is all the criteria is getting satisfied? So therefore, the answer is option A. Option A clearly satisfies all those things. Now, sometimes in UPSC, you should go for the most appropriate answer. Sometimes a similar option can also be there, which also looks correct. But you should always go for the most appropriate thing. So why B is not correct? If you see C and D, you can easily eliminate. Some of the students might get confused with option B. Politically organized people. So let us assume, okay, the people is there. Let us assume. Definite territory is also there. Possessing an authority to govern them. Okay, the government is also there. Let us assume. Maintain law and order, protect their natural rights, and safeguard their means of sustenance. But the idea of sovereignty is not fully reflected here. So, which reflects the idea of sovereignty better? Option A reflects the idea of sovereignty far better than option B. So, we can imply something from option B also, but which is more explicitly giving that particular idea of sovereignty? It is option A. So, therefore, the right answer is option A. C and D, certain things are left out. So therefore, the learning objective right now is you should understand probably by this time what is a constitution, at least theoretically. As you'll proceed further, you'll have a broader understanding of that. And then by this time, you should also understand what is called as the concept of state politically. And now we'll move forward and we'll try to understand some of the salient features of the constitution. So how we have designed this first 4 or 5 classes, I'll have to just make you understand some of the key concepts even before entering into the constitution. When we'll enter into the constitution is only when we take up the preamble. But before that, you'll have to understand and have a broader idea of various things, some of the key words. Then we will also deal with some of the historical backgrounds and all those things for you to have a better understanding of how the Constitution of India came. That will take us few classes. Then we'll enter into the subject so that you feel confident before we move forward. All right, so please come to the next topic, that is the salient features of the Indian Constitution. So we'll try to understand the features of the Indian Constitution one by one. So the first thing that I have to explain as a part of the salient feature is that we know that India is having what kind of government can be established in India. One of the salient features under the Indian Constitution is that India is a democratic state. So okay. So can anyone tell me what do you mean by democracy? There are different ways you can define democracy. So is India a democracy? Of course, you should not have any doubt on that because India is definitely a democracy and the constitution also allows for only a democratic state. So what does it mean by democracy? What is by the people for the people? Very good. Any government in a democracy is elected by the people and they have to function for the people, and it is a government of the people, which means it is also possible for the people to change this government. It is not a government which will continue forever. It will continue as long as the government is a legitimate government. So that is what is called as the democracy, or to put it in a simple way, democracy means it is ruled by people. So who is the ultimate authority in a democracy? It is a people. It is ruled by people. But before I proceed further, if you see democracy, which I said ruled by people, you can further classify democracy into what is called as direct and indirect democracy. So democracy can be classified into how many types? Direct and indirect democracy. Can anyone tell me what type of democracy is India? Is it a direct or an indirect democracy? This indirect democracy is also what is called as a representative democracy. Indirect democracy is also what is called as a representative democracy. Now, in fact, if you look into the world in the modern era, in fact, most of the democracies are only indirect democracy. The direct democracy is very complex. That is not possible. Some country might have some minimal tools of direct democracy. No country is a direct democracy altogether, even though they are a democracy. So in a direct democracy, who will decide everything? The people will directly decide everything. The people will come as a sabha or as an assembly, and every matter will be put in front of the people, and the people have to ultimately vote and they have to decide. Now think of a case in India. So how many people will be there in India? 140 crore people. So can you make an assembly of 140 crore people and decide the things? It's a very complex thing. That's not practically possible. Therefore, the Constituent Assembly of India. So what is this body, Constituent Assembly? Has anyone heard of this word, Constituent Assembly? What is this body, Constituent Assembly? Can anyone tell me? Okay, so it's a body which contains the representative of the people, but primarily this body was constituted to draft the Constitution of India. So before the commencement of the Constitution, there was a body which is representative of the people of India, no doubt. But what was the primary objective of this body to be established? To draft the Constitution of India. That was a primary objective. It had other functions also. So the Constituent Assembly, they decided that in the future, that India should be what type of democracy? It should be a democracy, but it should be a representative democracy or an indirect democracy. That means in an indirect democracy, what is likely to happen is that the people will elect their representatives. Ultimately, who has authority to elect the representatives? It is the people. But once the representatives are elected, the representatives will carry out the government on behalf of the people. The people have no authority with respect to the day-to-day administration, the day-to-day decisions, and all those things. But otherwise, what is the power of the people in a democracy, especially in indirect democracy? They elect their representatives. Once the representatives are elected, they have already delegated the power to the representatives. It is the representatives who will carry out the government. It is still ruled by people, but not directly, but it is indirectly. Now, can anyone tell me who are those representatives based on your understanding? Very good. It is the MPs and the MLAs. At the national level, at the union level, it is the members of parliament. And at the state level, it is the members of the legislative assembly. As we'll proceed, we'll further understand about all those things. That means once our representatives are elected, who is going to carry out the administration? It is the representatives who will carry out the administration. Then thereupon, what is the role of the people? Okay, once by electing them, they already given the power to the representatives. Those representatives will continue the government for the next few years. Then after some time, the election will again come. And when the election again comes, people will again elect their representatives. Then again, it will continue for some more time. Now, in this way, does anyone has got any idea how long, once the representatives are elected, how long that they are likely to carry out the government in our country? 5 years. So some of you might have an idea, some of you may not. If you don't have an idea, so normally when a government is elected, normally what is the tenure of the government? Is normally it is 5 years. But thereafter, after 5 years, the election has to again happen. Therefore, now try to understand. So here the representatives are nothing but MPs and or MLAs. Therefore, try to understand democracy is not only about rule by people. In democracy, or to qualify as democracy, they should fulfill certain other important parameters as well. Unless and until those parameters are there, you can never call that particular country to be a democracy or that constitution to provide for what is called as a democratic form of government. So first thing that you have understood is what is democracy. It is ruled by people, but it is not just ruled by people, but to qualify as democracy, it should have certain other characteristics as well. So what are the characteristics to qualify as democracy? So first and foremost thing is basically what is called as periodic election. So it should also have what is called as periodic election. So do we have periodic elections in our country? Because every certain number of years, the elections has to happen again and again. Suppose let us assume we say that India is a democracy and the constitution says the election will happen once in 50 years. That means once elected, he is continued to be in power for how long? 50 years. Can you say that as a real democracy? That is not a real democracy because the people's mood may change, the people's will may change. It has to be reflected in a periodic basis. So periodic election is a very, very important feature of what is called as democracy. Okay, we say that there is periodic election, but the constitution says only one party will contest election. There can be no other party which can contest election. How many party can contest election? Only one party, and in that only one party, only one person will always become the prime minister candidate. Can you call that as a real democracy? That is also not real democracy. So therefore, another important feature is it is not really about periodic election, it should also be free and fair elections. Free and fair elections. Free and fair elections. What do you mean by free elections? Free elections is a form of election which is free from any form of malpractices. So, for example, the election should not have booth capturing, the election should not have any other election manipulations. That is basically what is called as free election. So, free from malpractices. What is a fair election? Very good. So fair election is providing equal opportunity for every candidate contesting the election. Suppose it says that only a particular category of people should contest the election. It is not giving opportunity to others. Then it is not a fair election. So every candidate who wanted to contest election should have a fair opportunity of winning the election or a level playing field in contesting the elections. So the election has to be free and fair elections. So periodic elections, free and fair elections. But let us assume a constitution provides for periodic elections. The constitution also provides for free and fair election. So in India, do we have periodic elections? Because elections have to happen every 5 years, sometimes even before that also. We'll understand that later. But generally, it has to happen every 5 years. All right. But not necessarily only 5 years. It can be before that also. Sometimes it can go even after 5 years. So there are a lot of ifs and buts, which you will understand later. Free and fair election. Do we have any provision in the constitution to provide for a free and fair election? Who is a neutral umpire to ensure free and fair elections in our country? Very good. The Election Commission of India is there to act as a neutral umpire. Whether they are behaving or not behaving, that's a different thing. But at least the constitution envisages that is what is their role. All right. So Election Commission of India is to ensure the free and fair election. Now let us assume that there is periodic election, there is free and fair election, but the constitution also says only people who are possessing minimum 5 crores of wealth will have the right to vote. The others will not have the right to vote. So if this is the rule, let us assume minimum who is possessing 5 crore of wealth. Do you know that out of 140 crore people, how many of them will have the right to vote? Less than 1% probably. So it is considered to be the people who are in the rich class if they possess minimum wealth of 5 crore, which is less than probably 1% in our country. So then again, it is not a democracy. So therefore, one of the important feature of democracy, it should also provide for what is called as universal adult franchise. Have you ever heard of this? Universal adult franchise. Now, what do you mean by universal adult franchise? That means the constitution itself is guaranteeing this right that every eligible adult individual, not every individual for that matter, it is not every individual or not every adult individual, every eligible adult individual shall have the right to vote. Now, what does it mean, every eligible adult individual? The adult itself is who has attained 18 years of age. So I have used the word every eligible adult individual. That means not necessarily everyone who has attained 18 years of age will also have the right to vote. Of course, citizen of India. So I'm saying that someone who is a citizen of India attained 18 years of age, so they will have the right to vote by default. There are a lot of other conditions. Say, for example, the state shall not discriminate in giving the voting rights, but it is not that every adult individual who is a citizen of India will also get the right to vote. The law, constitution itself is making it very clear that every adult individual who's attained 18 years of age, who is otherwise not disqualified under any of the law. So, for example, an adult individual, 18 years of age, a citizen of India, is convicted and he is in jail. He may not have the right to vote. If he is an adult individual citizen of India who is unsound to mind, he may not get the right to vote. Therefore, who is otherwise not disqualified, they all shall have the right to vote. So, as of now, you try to understand that universal adult franchise means every adult individual who is otherwise not disqualified by law shall have what is called as the right to vote. Is it clear to all of you? Now, try to understand, does the Constitution of India provides for all those things? Does the Constitution of India provides for periodic elections? Does it provides for free and fair elections? Does it provides for universal adult franchise? That means every adult individual shall have the right to vote who is otherwise not disqualified by law. Does anyone know which article in the Constitution provides for this universal adult franchise? Article 326 read along with Article 325. So primarily Article 326 read along with Article 325 provides for what is called as universal adult suffrage. So, or universal adult franchise means basically it is conferring rights. So can we say that India is a democracy because of all these things? India is not merely a democracy for the reason that there is a rule by people, although indirectly, but it should also contain all these features. Then only you can call that as a functional democracy. So can we say India is a functional democracy? Therefore, not only India, for any country to qualify as a functional democracy, they should satisfy these characteristics. First of all, there should be a periodic election, and that election should be a free and fair election. And then all the adult individuals, otherwise not disqualified by law, shall also have the right to vote. Is it clear to all of you? Now, India is not only a democracy. So, for democracy, you can have all those things. But India is not only a democracy, India is also a parliamentary democracy. So, that's the next important understanding you should have. So please write down the next thing, that is parliamentary democracy. Any doubts, please ask me. Please do not talk. Any doubt in democracy? Yes. Huh. I said that they cannot vote in the elections. Voting in the elections and contesting the elections are two different things. So when they are convicted and when they are in jail, temporarily they are not allowed to vote. That doesn't mean that they cannot contest in the elections. So these are two different things which we'll later understand, probably when I take up the Representation of People Act. All right. So these two things are two different things. Okay. Yes. Switzerland is not a direct democracy. In Switzerland, there are tools of direct democracy. That's why I said that no democracy presently can be a direct democracy, because it becomes very complex. But in Switzerland, they do follow at the local level. At the local level, they have where people will come together and they'll decide with regard to the local level governance. So there are tools of direct democracy which they do it through process like referendum. They have initiatives like recall. So they have some tools of direct democracy, which is not our concern. Anyways, in India we follow what is called as indirect democracy. So Switzerland is also not a completely direct democracy. They have certain areas where they specifically use the certain tools of direct democracy. All right. So that is what is understanding you should have. Now try to understand, democracy basically has to have all these features. And presently, as you already said, across the world, no country can be direct democracy, because you understand the complexity of a democracy being a direct democracy. But at certain level, at the local body level, say for example, we call in India local bodies like Panchayat system. Even in Panchayat system also, we do not have direct democracy. But in Switzerland, they have certain tools of direct democracy at the local level. What is flawed? I'm not sure. I have not come across that particular term. But anyways, that is not relevant in the Indian context. You don't have to worry about that. Okay. So you can just refer to that, or I'll just check and let you know. I have not come across such a term so far. As a flawed democracy, politically, I have not come across such a definition, but probably I'm not sure. Okay. Okay. So come to the next thing, that is parliamentary democracy. So what do you mean by parliamentary democracy? If you understand the concept of parliamentary democracy, if you see parliamentary democracy, so what is democracy? It is ruled by people. Now, in a parliamentary democracy, because across the world, if you see, democracies can be further classified. It is not only about parliamentary, sorry, direct or indirect democracy, where most of the democracies are indirect, but democracies can also be further classified as what is called as presidential democracy and parliamentary democracy. These are the two major types of democracies. The Constituent Assembly of India has chosen for what is called as a parliamentary democracy, for the reason that we'll understand as we'll proceed further. But another type of democracy is also what is called as a presidential democracy. So can you give me examples of any country which has got presidential democracy? USA is a classic example of what is called as presidential democracy. India is a classic example of what is called as parliamentary democracy, not UK. UK is also a classic example of parliamentary democracy. In fact, we have taken our idea of parliamentary democracy from UK. All right. So let us try to understand as to what is a parliamentary democracy. When you say that parliamentary democracy means, one simple principle that you have to keep in your mind is the legitimacy of any government comes from its ability to maintain the majority in the legislature. That's the classic example, or that's a classic feature of what is called as a parliamentary democracy. I'll explain that further. But to understand that, first let us try to understand how this parliamentary democracy. Now, last time the elections happened to the Lok Sabha. Can anyone tell me how many times elections have happened to the Lok Sabha so far after the commencement of the constitution? How many times it has happened? Can anyone guess it? 2024, when the government was formed, can anyone tell me 2024 how many times already the election to the Lok Sabha has happened? 17 times, 16 times, 18 times, 19 times. That was the 18th Lok Sabha election. So 18 times the elections have happened. We say normally how many years the election happens to the Lok Sabha? 5 years. So 18 into 5, how much? 90 years. After the commencement of the constitution, how many years are there? Only 76 years. That means not necessarily that we'll have to wait for 5 years. Sometimes earlier also the election can happen. Sometimes earlier also the government can be dismissed for the reason that we'll understand that India is a parliamentary democracy. But it was the 18th Lok Sabha elections. Okay. Now, we'll have to understand everything one by one. 18th Lok Sabha elections. Does anyone know how many members are there in the Lok Sabha? 5? 553, 543, 550, 552. I'm not talking about the total authorized strength, but what is the maximum membership presently? 5? 543 or 545? So the total authorized strength in the Lok Sabha is 550. In the original constitution, it was 552, but presently it is only 550. The total authorized strength is 550 because initially in the original constitution, they allowed for total strength to be 550 plus 2 Anglo-Indian members can be nominated, but that Anglo-Indian nomination has been presently done away with. So today the total authorized strength is 550, but in that only 543 seats has been allocated. So therefore, presently the total strength of Lok Sabha is how much? 543. So therefore, whenever election happens, the election will happen for 543 MPs. Okay, so 18th Lok Sabha also the elections happen for 543 MPs. Now, normally after the election is conducted, the result will be announced by the Election Commission of India. After the result is announced by the Election Commission of India, then somebody has to form the government. Do you know who usually forms the government? Usually the party, a single largest party or a coalition of parties which has got the majority, they'll form the government. Now, you tell me what would be majority in this 543 to form the government. So, normally the leader of the single largest party or the leader of the largest coalition which has got the majority, they'll go to the president and stake claim to form the government. What would be the majority of this? 2? Okay, 272, let us assume. So any party which has got the majority is minimum they should have 272. They can have more number of the more than that, but let us assume 272 is there. Then they'll go to the president and they'll try to form government. Now, can anyone tell me after the 18th Lok Sabha election, is there any party which has got that majority? I do not know politically you're following it or not. If you know, you tell me. Otherwise, it's not a concern because I'm sure that most of you might not have followed it because it is in 2024. Most of you might not even made a decision of preparing for civil service. But anyone who followed it, if you know it, no single party. So it was a coalition which has got the majority. The NDA coalition had these numbers. No single party. The single largest party was the Bharatiya Janata Party, which has I think 240 seats or something, a little around that. But independently they're not having it. But the coalition, the NDA coalition had it. And who was the prime ministerial candidate for the NDA coalition? It was the present prime minister. Mr. Narendra Modi was the prime ministerial candidate. So what that coalition had the majority. So as a leader of the coalition, Mr. Narendra Modi has gone to the president and he has submitted the stakes to form the government. And subsequently, so once any party or a coalition, not necessarily a single party, it can be a single party or a coalition. That's what is very important. It can be a single party or a coalition. I hope you understand the word coalition. Coalition means group of party having a common agenda. So that's basically what is called as coalition. So whoever has got the majority, they'll go to the president of India and submit that these are the number of MPs we have got. Probably we have got that mark or more than that, and appoint me as the prime minister. Now after that, who will appoint the prime minister of India? the president will appoint the prime minister. Not only the prime minister, the president will also appoint the council of ministers. So prime minister is not the only minister. He is only the prime of all the ministers. So apart from that, he will also appoint the council of ministers. Who will appoint the council of ministers? President or the prime minister? It is the president who will appoint the prime minister as well as the council of ministers. But who will be usually appointed as a prime minister? Anyone who is the leader of the majority party or the majority coalition. Once a prime minister is appointed, only on the advice of the prime minister, the other ministers can be appointed. The president on his own cannot appoint the other ministers. Who will advise the president in appointing the other ministers? It is the prime minister. Okay, now the prime minister and the other council of ministers are appointed. Now becomes the important in understanding what is called as a parliamentary democracy. So far, I have just made you explain how the government is formed. Now tell me one thing. The prime minister and the council of ministers has formed the government, and did they have to have some numbers before they form the government? Yes, they should have this number, but not necessarily in a democracy. Before appointing as a prime minister or the council of ministers, they should have this number. Sometimes, even after appointing, also they can prove it. But normally they'll have the numbers, they'll form the government. Even if they do not have the number, also still someone can be appointed as a prime minister, and on his advice, council of ministers can also be appointed. Suppose if they do not have this number before getting appointed, after the president appoints a prime minister and the council of ministers, anyways the president will ask them to prove this majority. They have to prove this majority in the floor. And where it has to be proved? It has to be proved in the Lok Sabha, not in the parliament. Specifically in which house it has to be proved? It has to be proved in the Lok Sabha. If they fail to prove that, then the president can dismiss that particular government. He can dismiss the prime minister and the council of ministers. Now comes the important point. Therefore, the prime minister and the council of ministers, where they need to have the majority? They need to have the majority in the Lok Sabha, and Lok Sabha is part of what? Which institution? Lok Sabha is part of the parliament. Not only they need to have the majority at the time of forming the government, but for the next 5 years, they continuously need to have the majority. This majority should always be there in the Lok Sabha, not necessarily only at the time of forming the government. Therefore, this is what is called as a government. For India, what is government? The union government. This is the union government. The prime minister and the council of ministers represent the real union government. They are the powerful authorities in the union government. Therefore, the government shall always have the majority in which house? The Lok Sabha. And the Lok Sabha is part of which institution? Parliament. Not necessarily only at the time of forming the government. During the course of the next 5 years, always they need to have the majority in the Lok Sabha, which is part of the parliament. And at any point of time they lose a majority, what will happen to this particular government? This government can be dismissed by the president. Therefore, what is the idea of parliamentary democracy? The legitimacy of any government in a parliamentary democracy will be there as long as it can maintain majority where? As long as it can maintain majority in the legislature, that is in the Lok Sabha, to be very specific. Therefore, do you also not understand this government is continuously accountable to the Lok Sabha? And how it is accountable to the Lok Sabha? Because they need to have the majority in the Lok Sabha. The moment they lose a majority, what can happen to the government? The government can be dismissed. Therefore, this government is controlled by whom? This government is controlled by the Lok Sabha, because they need to have the majority in the Lok Sabha. And Lok Sabha as an institution is part of the broader institution, what? Parliament. Therefore, this is why it is called as parliamentary democracy. That means in this democracy, model of democracy, the government that is formed is ultimately controlled by whom? Controlled by the Lok Sabha, because they should always maintain majority where? In the Lok Sabha. That is why it is called as parliamentary democracy. Is that clear to all of you? So please write down one important line. In a parliamentary democracy, please write down, in a parliamentary democracy, the government is formed, the government is formed, the government is formed, the government is formed from the people's representative, the government is formed from the people's representative who are part of for part of the institution that is parliament, for part of the institution that is parliament, for part of the institution that is parliament, and also and also and also the legitimacy of the government comes and also the legitimacy of the government comes from its ability, the legitimacy of the government comes from its ability to maintain majority in the and the ability the legitimacy of the government comes from its ability to maintain majority in the legislature, to maintain majority in the legislature. To be very specific, in India's case, to be very specific, in India's case, to be very specific, in India's case, the Prime Minister and Council of Ministers, the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers shall always maintain majority in the Lok Sabha. The Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers shall always maintain majority in the Lok Sabha. In which house they have to maintain the majority? They shall always maintain majority in the Lok Sabha. Okay, so please listen to me. So, what is one single defining factor of a parliamentary democracy? So, in fact, in the Constituent Assembly, there was a debate. Before the Constitution was drafted, a lot of debate has happened in the Constituent Assembly. One important debate that has happened in the Constituent Assembly is whether India should be a presidential democracy or a parliamentary democracy. I'm sure that I have not explained you as to what is presidential democracy, but because that is not the feature of the Indian Constitution. But anyways, I'll discuss the presidential democracy also. There is a topic in your syllabus which is called as a comparison of constitution across the world. How many of you gone through the main syllabus? Have you gone through the main syllabus? Try to go through the main syllabus. So to be successful in the examination, the syllabus has to be in your mind. Now, why the syllabus has to be in your mind? Only when the syllabus is in your mind, when you read the paper, you will understand, okay, this may be relevant for me. This may not be relevant for my subject. For which first the syllabus has to be in your mind, which will take you some time. But probably one of the important thumb rule that you should follow to be successful, you should remember not only the GS syllabus, not only GS paper 2, all the syllabus for all the papers has to be there in your mind, which will not happen in one single day. But if you continuously look into the syllabus for, say, let us assume 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, it will get into your mind. And not only your GS syllabus, whatever is your optional has to also be in your mind. You'll have to practice your mind in such a way that the entire syllabus in your mind, that helps you extremely well in the examination. Okay, so coming back to the point that during the Constituent Assembly, there was a debate whether India should be a parliamentary democracy or a presidential democracy. And do you know that most of the members in the Constituent Assembly has chosen in favor of parliamentary democracy? Now, what could be the reason, do you think, that the parliamentary democracy was chosen rather than a presidential democracy? There is an advantage of presidential democracy also. But despite that advantage, they have chosen what is called as a parliamentary democracy. What is the advantage of parliamentary democracy? The advantage is not collective decision making. What is the advantage of parliamentary democracy? Very good, responsible government. Because in a parliamentary system, the government is more accountable. How the government is more accountable in a parliamentary system? In a parliamentary system, not only at the time of forming the government, they need to have the majority, but they need to always have the majority throughout the 5-year term. At any point of time, if they lose the majority, then this government can be dismissed. Therefore, the government is continuously accountable to whom? Continuously accountable to the Lok Sabha. So, the parliamentary system would make the system more responsible, more accountable than that of a presidential system. In a presidential system, try to understand, I'll give a small example. In a presidential system today, let us take the example of United States of America. Who is the real authority there in USA? That's a presidential democracy. So the real authority is a president. In a parliamentary system, it will always mostly the prime minister, the president. Now, do you know that unlike India, there Mr. Trump does not need any majority in their legislature. So similar to that of Parliament of India, there is also an institution in USA. What is that institution? That institution is what is called as Congress. In the Congress, they also have two houses. One is basically what is called as a Senate, and other is what is called as a House of Representatives. Their Senate is like the Rajya Sabha in India. Their House of Representatives is like the Lok Sabha in India. But there, once Mr. President or Mr. Trump is elected or any other president is elected, they need not have any majority in their House of Representatives. But here in India, does a Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, do they need the majority in the Lok Sabha? Yes, not only at the time of forming the government, for the next 5 years. So, which form of government is becoming more accountable to the legislative body? It is a parliamentary system. So, therefore, the Constituent Assembly chose the parliamentary system because they felt that the parliamentary system is more accountable to the Lok Sabha or to the legislative body. But the disadvantage is what? Because they are more accountable, this can become little unstable because at any time the government can be dismissed if the majority is not there. But which would become more stable? A presidential system is more stable. But however, the Constituent Assembly has chosen accountability over stability. They wanted our system has to be more accountable. Is it clear to all of you? So just write down one line. The parliamentary system. So please write the parliamentary system. The parliamentary system ensures continuous accountability. The parliamentary system ensures continuous accountability of the executive. The parliamentary system ensures continuous accountability of the executive to the legislature. The parliamentary system ensures continuous accountability of the executive to the legislature. Now just see the applications. Now just come here. Okay, have a look into this particular question. This is again an UPSC question. So based on whatever you have learned, you can be in a position to answer this question right now. The parliamentary system of government is one in which, what is the answer? A parliamentary system of government is one. All political parties in the parliament are represented in the government. Today, do you think from Congress party there are ministers? From which party there are ministers? BJP and probably its coalition. So not necessarily every party will represent it. So anyways, you can remove that. But you can also come to direct answer based on whatever you discussed. So this is anyways wrong. What about statement B? The government is responsible to the parliament and can be removed by it. Is it true? Yes. Because ultimately the government is responsible to whom? To the parliament. See, this is a philosophical question. But in the constitution, they directly use the word Lok Sabha. Only Lok Sabha can remove them. But it's a philosophical question. They're not looking for the fact, the broader principle. So in a parliamentary system, the government is always responsible to whom? The parliament. And can the parliament remove? Can India, it can be done? So who exactly where the government has to maintain the majority? In the Lok Sabha. And if they, Lok Sabha, which is part of the parliament anyways. And if they lose the majority, they can be removed. Do you know there are governments which has been removed, which failed to prove the majority? In 1990, Narasimha Rao government, just how they passed it. But I think subsequently in 1998, once Vajpayee government has lost the majority in the Lok Sabha, they were removed. Therefore, try to understand always they need to have the majority. So this is the true thing. What about option C? The government is elected by the people and can be removed by them. Is it correct? As I already said, India is an indirect democracy. In an indirect democracy, people can elect the representatives. Thereafter, only the representatives can remove the government, not the people themselves. So this is also wrong. The government is chosen by the parliament, but cannot be removed by it before the completion of the fixed term. Can the parliament remove the government before the completion of the fixed term? Yes, at any time they can pass a no confidence motion. That is, majority if not there, they can be removed. Therefore, what is the answer in this case? The answer is option B. So this is how simple applications they can ask you questions. Is that clear to all of you? So democracy, parliamentary democracy. Now the next important concept is separation of powers. So please write down the next important feature of the Indian Constitution, separation of powers. So go through the concept of democracy and also parliamentary democracy. Any questions, please ask me for a couple of minutes. We can take some doubts if you want. Otherwise, we'll move to the next important feature, that is separation of powers. Any idea from any of the students? Yes, online students, do you have any doubt? Just a minute. Can single largest party, sir, can single largest party form government without coalition, or what if no party supports a single largest party? For example, recent Tamil Nadu elections. What if no party supports? Okay, so what is a way that the government will be formed? Is it possible for a single largest party, even without the sufficient number, to form the government? Yes, it is very much possible, because the constitution does not say that always have to prove majority before forming the government. But so even a single largest party, suppose if no single party is having the majority, no coalition is coming and they are able to form that particular numbers, but even in this particular case, the single largest party can still form the government. So the leader of the largest party can still be appointed as a prime minister at the union level, or as a chief minister at the state level. But what is necessary in this case? If they're not having the majority at the time of appointment, then in case of the union, the president, or in case of the states, the governor will give some time. They may give 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, whatever may be the time. And within the time, again a floor test will be conducted in the legislative body. That suppose in case of the parliament, it has to be tested in the Lok Sabha. Suppose in case of the states, it has to be tested in the respective legislative assembly. The same thing has happened recently in the state of Tamil Nadu. I do not know if you have followed it. So in the state of let us not go into the numbers. That is not important for you to remember each and every state. But in case of Tamil Nadu, the newly formed government after the elections recently, a single largest party did not have the majority. Neither any coalition came together, because the result was so complex. They were not able to form the coalition also. So still the governor appointed the single largest party, the leader of the single largest party, as a chief minister, and gave 2 days time to prove majority. And within 2 days, there was a floor test in the Legislative Assembly of Tamil Nadu, and subsequently the majority was proved. So anyways, you have to prove the majority. But what is a time limit? It is up to the governor. There is no fixed time limit in the constitution. Sometimes they may give 1 day, sometimes 1 week. It may go up to 1 month also. It is for the governor and the time to be given. But that majority should anyways be proved. If the majority is not proved when the test is conducted in the floor of the house, then the government can be dismissed by the governor in the state and by the president in the union. Is that clear to all of you? So having a majority even before appointment is not necessary. But somebody can be appointed, but later they have to prove the majority. Is that clear? Yes. No, there are different ways that you can refer to a particular constitution. So parliamentary democracy is one of their feature, and there are constitutional monarchy is another feature. So it is not that if one is there, the other is not there. So they all represent. So for example, if I ask you, how will you describe India? You can say India is the most populous country, probably. It is the most diverse country in terms of the culture. It doesn't mean they are contradicting one another. So there are different ways how you can define, or probably you can uh, bring out the features of the constitution. So both are true in case of UK. It's a parliamentary democracy. It's a constitutional monarchy as well. Clear? Yes. Any other questions? Yes. Who is that? In case nobody is able to, then such a situation is what is called as hung assembly in case of the states, or hung parliament. All right. So in case of hung assembly or hung parliament, when it happens, let us assume in a particular state, then that state will be kept under the president rule. There's an option of what is called as president rule, and that will be, the state will be kept under president rule for some time. And then within a specified time, then the election commission has to conduct a re-election. So anyways, in the re-election, somebody will form the government. All right. So that's how it happens. In case of the union, so if they're not able to prove the majority, then that government will become a caretaker government. Still that government will continue. Suppose in the center somebody is appointed as a prime minister and he is not having the majority, and then he is not able to prove the majority, though that government will be dismissed, but somebody has to be there, no, till the new government is elected. So till the time the new elections happens and the new government is elected by the election conducted by the election commission and the new government is elected, the previous government itself would continue as a caretaker government. The concept of what is called as caretaker government. The idea is that the caretaker government will not have any power. It is just that it will maintain status quo, it will carry out day-to-day administration. That's it. They'll not have any power to make any new laws, new policies, but they'll carry out whatever is already there. It's a caretaker government. And that caretaker government will continue till the time the Election Commission of India conducts a new election and somebody is newly appointed as a prime minister. That is how there is an interim arrangement. Is that clear to all of you? So these are all little advanced concepts. You will understand as we'll proceed. Caretaker. See, they are interchangeably used. Okay, so although there is nothing which is called as an interim government, I have not heard this word interim government. There's only an interim budget. There's nothing concept which is called as an interim government. It is only a caretaker government. And in case of states, it is normally the president rule. Okay, because there's no concept of president rule in the center. Only in the state it is possible. Okay, all right. Yes, the president cannot directly appoint the ministers. What will happen? First, he'll administer the oath of the prime minister. Only when the oath is administered by the president, then only he is the prime minister. Otherwise, he is not the prime minister. Please listen first. Now, what will happen is, first of all, the person who has got the majority or the largest party will stake claim. So what will happen is, once he stakes the claim, on the very same day, first he will administer oath to the prime minister, the president. Once he administers oath to the prime minister, have you not ever seen the oath taking ceremony? First, please wait. Please listen. Let me first explain, and then you can ask your doubt. First, he'll administer oath to the prime minister. So the prime minister, once he administers the oath, and then once he signs the document, he is officially, the moment he signs the document, he is officially the prime minister. And the prime minister has already given the advice. It is not that immediately he'll give the advice. The prime minister has already given a document to him. The moment the prime minister is appointed, then whatever document is already given to the president becomes the official advice of the prime minister to the president. It is all already decided. So on the same day, the other ministers will take oath. These are all few procedural things. You don't have to worry about that. They'll take care of the constitution properly. They know all those things. These are all procedural things, which means once he is appointed as a prime minister, whatever advice is already given, it is an official advice. So according to that advice, other ministers will take oath on the same day. So that's how it happens. All right. All right. So please write on the next topic, that is separation of powers. Separation of powers. Okay, just write down a line as to what is separation of powers, then we'll learn more about it. Separation of power basically means that the power is separated between different organs of the state. The power is separated between different organs of the state under the Constitution of India. The power is distributed between different organs of the state under the Constitution of India. Under the Constitution of India. The basic philosophy behind separation of powers, the basic philosophy behind the concept of separation of powers, the basic philosophy behind the concept of separation of powers is not to give all the powers, to one single authority, is not to give all the powers to one single authority, but rather to distribute the powers, to distribute the authority to different powers, to distribute different authorities to different powers to different authorities, to distribute different powers to different authorities, to ensure to ensure to ensure a proper system of checks and balances, to ensure a proper system of checks and balances. Okay, so please listen to me. So basically the idea of separation of powers is that not all the powers should be given in one single authority. Suppose let us assume there's only one authority, or say let us assume one person. That one person is having all the powers under the constitution. Say for example, he will make the laws, he will implement the laws, he will also see the violation of the laws. So do you think that it can be put into practice fairly if all the powers is given in one single authority? Now that one single authority, concentration of power is also good, provided that authority is incorruptible, that authority is very efficient. But what if that authority itself is a corrupt person? Do you think then the power can be misused? The power can be abused? Can it be exercised arbitrarily? Therefore, any system can be very proper only when that not all the powers is given upon one single authority. And when you do not give all the powers on one particular authority, if this authority makes a mistake, is it necessary for somebody else to check that? So is that a best system, or giving one person all the authority and there is no way to check that particular person how he exercises power, which would be a best system? The best system is where you distribute the authority and also you have some element of control of one authority over by another authority. That's a best system. That is what we follow under the Constitution of India, and that's basically what is called as separation of powers. So please listen here. What is separation of powers? So basically under the Constitution of India, three important organs that we have. So broadly, we have certain other independent bodies also, but broadly these are the three important organs under the state. So what are the three important organs under the state? One is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. The executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. So basically, who are called as executives? Executives are basically what is called as a government. So for example, we say union government, we have state government, we have local government, whatever it is, they all come under what is called as the executives. So at the broadest level, who are all considered to be the executives at the union level? The prime minister and the council of ministers. The president is there, but he's a normal executive. The real executives are the prime minister and the council of ministers. Okay, so for the executives, so here you can say the prime minister and the council of ministers in the union. And similarly at the state level, who are the executives? The chief minister and the council of ministers. I'm actually talking about the real executives. It may include the bureaucrats also, it may include the president, governor, but they all, president and the governor are nominal, and the bureaucrats, the servants, they follow the directions given by these executives. Okay, so what does it mean by legislature? Who comes under the legislature? Which institution? Very good. The institution of parliament and the institution of the state legislature. And who comes under the judiciary? The hierarchy of courts. That means not just the Supreme Court, the High Court, the subordinate courts, that is the district courts and courts below the district courts, they all come under what is called as judiciary. So I'll put it in one single word, the hierarchy of courts. The hierarchy of courts. This is basically what is called as the judiciary. Now, what the constitution says, that in the constitution we follow the principle of what is called as separation of powers. And what is this idea of separation of powers? The constitution is not giving all the powers to one single authority. Rather, it is distributing, rather it is separating different authorities, different powers to different authorities. And whatever is a legislature, so primarily their power is what is called as lawmaking. So what is their power? Here it is lawmaking. They can make the laws. Okay, you make the law. Who is going to implement this law, put it into action? Whose authority? It is the authority of the executives. So the implementation of laws is going to be the authority of what is called as the executives. Now, what is the authority of the judiciary under the constitution? So, okay, we know that the legislature can make laws, but think, can the legislature make laws going beyond the constitution? Say, for example, I told that what is constitution, remember? The constitution is a fundamental rule book of the country. But the country is not only governed by the fundamental rule book. Of course, they are the most important things. But apart from the fundamental law, we also have what type of laws? Ordinary law. So any law that is made by the parliament is an ordinary law. Can you give me an example of an ordinary law? Any example? Yes, we have seen Motor Vehicle Act, which I myself told. Any other example of an ordinary law? Yes. Okay, Dowry Prohibition Act. Okay, then very good. National Green Tribunal. Yes. Very good. RTI, which is BNSS. Presently, it has been renamed BNSS, BNS. That is former IPC, CRPC. These are all ordinary laws. Thousands of laws are there, ordinary laws. So I'm not trying to recollect every law. That's not the important thing. But what you have to keep in your mind, none of these ordinary laws, or for that matter, any of these ordinary laws which is passed by the parliament or the state legislature, they can be violative of what is there in the constitution. Can any of these ordinary laws be violative of fundamental rights? No, they cannot be violative of, as a general rule, they cannot be violative of fundamental rights. That the legislature has to take due attention, due care that they shall not do that. But it is not necessary always a parliament makes a law that they'll take the due care. Sometimes they may also be violative of the fundamental rights. Suppose if they have made a law which is violative of the fundamental rights or any of the other provisions of the constitution, who has got the authority to strike down that particular law? It is the judiciary. So basically, what is the power of the judiciary? The power of the judiciary is basically what is called as judicial review. The technical word is that they have the power to judicially review. They have the power to judicially review that the laws made by the parliament or the state legislature is not in violation of the constitution. So they have the power not only to judicially review the laws made by the parliament and state legislature. Sometimes it might be possible that the law made by the parliament and state legislature is appropriate, but the way it is implemented is inappropriate. The way that it is implemented is excessive. The way that it is implemented only violates the rights, not the law in itself. Therefore, the judiciary will also have the power to review what? Not just the laws, but they can also review what is called as administrative actions, the implementation also. Either way, the law or the way it is implemented shall not be in violation of what? Shall not be in violation of what is given in the constitution. So therefore, they have the power of what is called as judicial review. So they can judicially review the executive action also. They can judicially review what? The legislative actions as well. Therefore, broadly, what is this idea of separation of powers? Is that under the constitution is allowing for multiple authorities, and every authority is given distinct powers. So what is the power of the legislature? You make law. What is the power of the executives? You implement those laws. What is the power of the judiciary? You see whether the laws are made in line with the constitution. You also see whether the executives are implementing those laws, it is in line with the constitution. If it is not in line with the constitution, you can do what? You can strike down them. You can strike down to the extent of such violation, it can be struck down by the judiciary. So therefore, not every authority is concentrated in one single authority, rather it is divided between different authorities. That is basically the idea of separation of powers. But in turn, the most important thing is, in turn, do you also not think this idea of separation of powers allows for what is called as checks and balances? Now, what do you mean by checks and balances? See, the idea of separation of power is you are segregating powers to different authorities. That is separation of powers. But do you also not see that this segregation of powers or separation of powers in turn also leads to checks and balances? What do you mean by checks and balances? Checks and balances means as to what control one authority can exercise over the other authority. So, is it possible that the judiciary exercise some element of control over the other authority? What is the control that the judiciary exercises over the other authority? What is the authority that they exercise? That is a power of judicial review. So, this is a power that the judiciary can exercise over the other authority. So, similarly, do you think that the legislature can exercise some element of control over the executive? What is a control the legislature exercise over the executive? Very good. So, the legislature can ask questions by which they can ensure the accountability, but broader than that. That's a good example, but much more broader we already seen. What is the best way of accountability that the legislature can exercise over the executives? Majority. They always need to have a majority. The survival of the executives itself depends upon what? It depends upon what is called as the executive. So by giving this power, that what the constitution gives them the power, that they should always have the majority here. So the legislature can exercise control over the executive, because the executive should always need to have what? Always need to have majority. The legislature can raise a number of questions in the parliament and in the state legislature through which they can ensure the accountability. So in which the legislature can have control over the executives. The judiciary can review the actions of the executive. Judiciary can control executives. The judiciary can control the legislature also by reviewing their actions. In a way, is it possible that the judiciary be kept under any control? There has to be check on the judiciary as well. Is there any check on the judiciary? What power the other organs exercise? Very good. The word is not impeachment. The word is removal of the judges. Okay, the impeachment can be used only for the President of India. Although in some of your books the word impeachment is used, but constitutionally the constitution uses the word impeachment only to the President. So for the judges you can say removal of the judges. So who is authority to remove the judges? Can anyone tell me who is authority to remove the judges? Suppose if the question comes, who is authority to remove the judge? The options are President, Parliament, the Chief Justice of India, none of the above. So who is authority to remove the judges of the Supreme Court, for example, or also that of the High Court? Who is authority? How many of you think it is Parliament? How many of you think it is President? Okay, so please be very clear. Anyways, we'll discuss about all those things, but in the very first class itself, be it very clear. Suppose if a question comes, who is authority to remove the judges of the Supreme Court and High Court? Without any doubt, you should select only the President of India. So who is authority to remove the judges? It is only the President, but it is not the full authority of the President. But anyways, the removal order has to be signed by whom? Only the President. Without the President signing the order, they cannot be removed. But the President cannot do it by himself. The President can do so only after a motion is passed in the Parliament. But the motion passed in the Parliament in itself cannot remove the judges. After it is passed in the Parliament, who has to sign that? The President. So anyways, the removal authority is only the President. Therefore, if the judiciary, if the judges do something wrong, if they try to wrongly pass orders, if they do a lot of mistakes, so normally a lot of protection is given to them. Removing that is not easy. But let us assume the judiciary or the judges try to perform arbitrarily. There should be a check up on their powers also? Because who is going to stop if a good law is passed and they're striking that also down? And say, let us assume the administrative actions are proper, they're striking that also down. So they should also be kept under check. Is a possibility that they can also arbitrarily exercise their power? So what is the only way we can keep that under check is, if you function arbitrarily, you can also be removed. And who is authority to remove them? The President is authority to remove them, but only after an address and a motion is passed in the Parliament. But anyways, so in this way, in removal of the judges, who is having the control over the judiciary? The legislature is also having control. And finally, who is passing that order? The executive is passing the order. So in this way, if you see, every organ will be under some element of control over the others. All right. But now try to understand, the executive will not be able to have any element of control over the legislature. That is not envisaged in a parliamentary democracy. In a parliamentary democracy, who has to have control over the executives? The legislature is to have control over the executives. Vice versa is dangerous, because the legislature is representing whom? The legislature is representing the will of the people. The will of the people, because people elect the members to the legislature. So normally, who will have control over the executives? The legislature will have control over the executives. Vice versa is not the same. So this kind of checks and balances is also provided under the Constitution of India. Is that clear to all of you? So separation of power is one thing, but on top of separation of powers, what we are also trying to provide? We are also trying to provide what is called as a system of checks and balances. Take down a question, a mains question. So try to write an answer, but there is also one session that we'll have every week. So where I'll also discuss certain questions. Okay, so you try to write it on your own, but I'll also try to give you how to write a answer. I'll explain that. So you try to compare your answer with the answer that I'm discussing, but that will come in the end of the week. So once we complete for this particular week, then it will come. But in the meantime, whatever you know, do not hesitate. So your answers may not be a perfect answer even when you clear the UPSC examination. There's nothing which is called as a perfect answer. It is only relative improvement over a period of time. So even the person who ends up getting first rank after his mains examination is over, he'll always have a feel that for some answers you would have written better. So therefore you feel that, okay, I'll prepare everything and then I'll start writing answers. It is not going to be your benefit, and it is never going to happen. Is that clear to all of you? So whatever you know, whatever you feel you can write, it may not be a very good answer initially. It may take some time, but start writing. You start writing, then gradually it will improve. You are breaking certain inhibitions you have got. That is what is very important. All right. So take down a question. I don't. Though the Constitution of India, though the Constitution of India, though the Constitution of India provides for separation of powers, though the Constitution of India provides for separation of powers, though the Constitution of India provides for the principle of separation of powers, it relies, it relies, it relies more upon the principle of, it relies more upon the principle of checks and balances. It relies more upon the principle of checks and balances. Comment. Comment. So comment basically means what is your view on this particular statement. Now try to understand this particular statement. What the statement is taking, it is a 10 marker. So don't worry about the word limit. Don't worry about the time. Because very first day you cannot set the time and the word limit, because your ability is not developed that you can write an answer within 10 minutes or say 8 minutes, 9 minutes, and you'll stick to the word limit. So don't worry about the word limit and the time limit. The idea is first you'll have to start writing. So when you continuously write for 3 to 6 months, then maybe probably you can think about it. So that is not the idea. So to think about the word limit and the time limit, first the idea is whether you are able to present your ideas in the form of an answer. Because you may have some idea. Many students have the problem, whatever they think, they are not able to represent that in a writing form. So that's the idea of this exercise as of now. Okay, but what you'll have to keep in your mind is, does the Constitution of India provides for a system of separation of powers? Does it provide? Yes. But the question is saying, though the Constitution provides for the principle of separation of powers, which you know, it relies more upon the principle of checks and balances, which means that the question is, the statement is trying to assess, though there is a system of separation of powers, there is no clear separation of powers in the Constitution of India. But it relies more upon the principle of what is called as checks and balances. Now, this has to come in your answer. Now, why there is no clear separation of powers? So separation of powers itself is that you are giving different authority to different organs. That is kind, that is okay. But what is the case in India is, though you give different powers to different organs, but inherently there is an overlap between two organs. Where there is an overlap? There is an overlap between these two organs, that is the legislature and the executive. Is there not an overlap between these two organs? Because where does the executive come from? The executive itself comes from the legislature. And they may have enormous influence over the legislature. Say, for example, the Prime Minister, first of all, he was a member of parliament. And even today, he is a member of parliament in the Lok Sabha. So there is an overlap between legislature and executive. But if you see the presidential system, for that matter, there is a clear separation of powers. The executives are separate, the legislature is separate, the judiciary is separate. In India, it is clean. The judiciary is separate. But where there is an overlap? There is an overlap between the legislature and the executive. Therefore, though we follow the principle of separation of powers, but we do not have a very clear separation of powers. Rather, we rely upon the principle of what? Rather, we rely upon the principle of checks and balances, how one organ can control the other organ. We also have the principle of separation of powers. It doesn't mean, but we do not have what is called as clear separation of powers. But rather, we believe more in the idea of what is called as system of checks and balances, how one organ can control the other organ. Is that clear to all of you? So this is what you'll have to bring it in your answer. You just try it out. Whenever you have the time, you can try it out. But anyways, I'll also discuss these questions. Not now, there is a separate session for that. So in that I'll discuss. But it is always good that before I discuss it, you made an attempt, you make a try for it, so that you'll have a lot of understanding how to do it further. Is that clear to all of you? So what are the understanding we got in today's class? First, we try to understand as to what is a constitution. Then we try to understand the definition of state. Then we have understood what is democracy, and we understood the features of democracy. We have understood what is parliamentary democracy. What is a single defining feature of a parliamentary democracy? What is a single defining feature of a parliamentary democracy? That is the continuous accountability of the executive to the legislature. That's a single defining factor. Then we also understood what is separation of powers. Not only separation of powers, but an element of checks and balances. So what is checks and balances? How one organ is able to control the other organ. Separation of powers is different authorities given to them under the constitution. All right. So whenever time permits, try to write an answer. Don't worry about how good or how bad is the answer. That is not at all the concern. But just you should start writing. If you are able to write 150 words on a question, that itself is a huge thing. Don't worry about the structure and all those things. That will gradually come. So whatever you feel is appropriate to that particular question, just try to write it. And then later you can compare and gradually it will improve. If you start writing today, 3 months later, probably you will feel the improvement. So you may not feel the improvement on a day-to-day basis. But 3 months later, you write an answer, and the first day you written an answer, when you compare it, you yourself will feel the difference. But that too, if you do it consistently. All right. So with that, I'll wind up the class for today. So we'll gradually cover all those things for the first few classes. Then thereupon, we'll proceed to the preamble. So to go to the preamble itself, it will take me 4 to 5 classes. Then we'll go to the preamble. We'll have to cover all those things. Okay, quickly, any questions before we wind it up? Any questions that you have got in your mind? Yes. Others, please listen. Please do not talk. So till the time I say the class is over, the class is not over. Okay. Yes. No, devolution is not the right word. Devolution basically means still the authority with somebody else. So whatever is authority, you are trying to give part of that authority to another person, which still it can be controlled. So here the ultimate authority is the constitution. The constitution anyways gets given the authority to a particular organ to use it. So it is only distribution, or you can say separation. Okay, not devolution. All right. Any other questions? All right. So one thing that I will continuously say, it's a simple thing, but it will give you the best results, is that you go home and revise whatever happens in that particular class. So when you come tomorrow, you should have revised whatever has happened in the first class. When you come to the third class, you should have revised whatever has happened in the first and the second class. When you come to the third class, you should have revised whatever has happened in the first, second, and the third class. So in that way, if you keep on doing that, then it will produce the best results. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll again meet tomorrow. Okay. Thank you.